Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of absolutely epic and entertaining racing action in the SimRacing International Thursday GT3 Championship Season 13 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. It is time for round number 2 of 10 in our 13th instalment of this championship, and where exactly we've made our way to today? Well, of course we've made our way down under to Australia for arguably the most unconventional street circuit in the world, and one that's withstood the test of time in terms of the thrills and spills it can provide. It is none other than the Mount Panorama Circuit, but we all know and love it and typically refer to it as Bathurst, a reference to the local city. 3.86 miles in length and consists of 23 corners, this circuit is unconventional in the fact the vast majority of its corners are situated over the top of the mountain from which it takes its official name of Mount Panorama. Indeed, around here, the main overtaking opportunities will be relegated to the straights that take our drives to and from the mountain. Although, to be fair, overtaking is not just going to be happening on the circuit today. We expect plenty of it in the pit lane as a good piece of strategy may enable a driver to get out in front, particularly when you consider the fact that we've got mixed weather on the cards and therefore going to the tyres at the right time, where it's a switch from slicks to wets or wets to slicks, that could always make the difference. But to start off today strong, when you need to have a good qualifying lap and going for pole position in qualifying, whether it be overall in class, that is going to be the art of the deal perhaps for our drivers, and for those who don't get it right, they may find themselves experiencing a bit of a deal breaker unless fortune favours them tonight. Alas, where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in tonight, catching all the racing action live from Circuit Side as we bring you the racing from Split B. Therefore, you're focusing on the Premier and Club classes. But remember, of course, if you are wanting to tune in for Split A as well, your Elite and Pro classes, we've got a broadcast in parallel available on the one place you can catch all the racing action for this season, all of the SimRacing International series on a weekly basis. That's on youtube.com and search for SRI or SimRacing International and you can tune in there. And why not subscribe today so that way you don't miss a trick of the beat when it comes to our weekly broadcast schedule. Split A is going to be in the capable hands, as always, of Joe Glass and Darren Thacker, but if you stay with us here in Split B, well, don't worry, you've got me. My name is Paul Walsh, and I shall be your host and commentator for this season of Split B. And well, ladies and gentlemen, as we make our way into our second round, let's bring up to speed with the story so far after one round at Watkins Glen, and what exactly we can expect coming into today. And as qualifying gets underway in the background there, the 30-minute session just ticking away, we look to our calendar. And as we can see, it's round number 2, it's time for Mount Panorama. Last time out on the 2nd of July, we open up the season with aplomb at the Watkins Glen International Racing Circuit. But at the mecca of road racing in the US of A, how exactly did it all go down in the US state of New York? Well, what we got to see there was an absolutely packed field make the way to the grid. And in terms of the qualifying session, well, a pack of 52 drivers made the way out there, but only 2 drivers would be contesting pole position overall and in Premier. One of them, Liam Fraser. The other one, Menno Bloem. But it was Bloem who managed to edge out Fraser in the end by only 0.03 of a second in a very tight duel. Meanwhile, for 3rd through to 26th, it was only a second that separated all what was 24 drivers there, and it was club pole sitter Mikel Salcuni at the top of that pack in 3rd place overall. And when you consider the fact they've been able to out-qualify his closest rival, Michael Rhodes, by the best part of 9 places, who started in 12th, 3 tenths behind, where it was looking all good for Mikel Salcuni. However, we also got to see some struggles in qualifying, perhaps none more so than Ellen Olsen, Valenti V Race's driver, who in the end managed to get some late pace together to start 29th overall, and there was no lap time set by Andy Rooney, forcing him to start for the 51st place, teammate to Olsen. But to be fair, Rooney impressed as he made his way through the field in the race on some smart strategy that was crafted by the team, and they were very pleased with that. But when we did go racing, well, there was a big near miss at the start as our drivers made the way through the S's. James Howarth at the heart of it, well, the car came loose through turn number 2, and he managed to force the car to the outside barrier at turn number 3 and keep it pinned against the wall. If he had not, we could have seen a huge traffic jam and indeed quite a few car parts being distributed across the circuit, but it wasn't to be at the front, but there was an instant further towards the back, and the stewards had to analyse it quite quickly after the racing was done. But after that, we definitely got settled down into a classic at Watkins Glen, and we got to see plenty of batting, but most importantly, for our first season with a brand new pit stop regulations which have seen fuel and tyre changes split, whereby the fuel goes into the car before the tyres may be changed, we saw a lot of drivers split the strategy. Some decided to go for all 4 tyres after fuel, some decided to go for no tyres and just simply take the fuel, and some decided to go for a mixture, and with it being a 90-minute race as well, the 2-stop strategy was the optimum strategy. Nobody went for the 1 stop, and we got to see some drivers do a huge amount of fuel saving, and we got to see some other drivers meanwhile do very little fuel saving and go all in for it. So it really was unknown territory territory. And at the end of it all, well, before we come on to your winners from the race, there were some great highlights, including Andy Rooney going from 23rd to 7th in the club class. Clive Vella almost ended up on the Premier podium for a huge amount of fuel, saving us to start in 8th in the class. And also we've got to see Stuart Rice struggling to make his way home in 4th place in club, where a trapped nerve in his arm in the final 10 minutes forced him to drive one-handed, and it was incredibly impressive from the Blue Sky Esports driver. But your winner overall and in Premier, it was Menno Bloem, who took that pole position, of course, but in the race, he was under initial pressure from the Moonshiners Racing Club pair, or the MRC pair of none other than Liam Fraser and Dean Sheasby, but he very grudgingly pulled away, and it was strategy that made the difference at the end, whereby the MRC drivers decided to split their strategies. Sheasby took no tyres, he only took fuel in his pit stops. At the other end of the spectrum, Fraser decided to change all 4 tyres and gave himself plenty of lap time, but also, of course, he had to sacrifice the best part of 23 seconds of the pit lane to do so, whereas Menno Bloem, meanwhile, went for fuel and only 2 tyres being changed, and that was the perfect trick in the end, and he won through that by the best part of 13 seconds, and it was a combination of pace and optimum time for his pit stops that really made it count. Meanwhile, in the club class, well, we didn't quite catch what happened on camera with the broadcast. We do apologise because it was a huge event, and we don't normally miss those, but we missed it last time out. It was Joshua Downing who took victory, but whilst he didn't qualify too well, he started 4th in class and 15th overall. Disappointed in his own words with his qualified performance, well, he went hunting after Mikel Salcuni, and in the end, what happened between the two of them was a brief altercation which saw contact. Salcuni unfortunately lost out on that. Downing took the lead, and after that he was able to bolt away on lap number 11 and run away to victory. Salcuni had to repair the car, and the two of them talked about it afterwards. They straightened things out. It was deemed a race incident. They didn't take it to the stewards. Indeed, it was one of those incidents whereby we get the feeling, being the first round of the season and 2 fresh faces to one another, they just need to introduce each other to one another a little bit more. But it was Joshua Downing who took the win. But to be fair, let's not rule out the fact that whilst he was 32 seconds ahead of Michael Rhodes at the finish, Michael Rhodes, who slipped to 6th in the class at the start, had to go on a huge recovery drive to finish in 2nd, and that was one of the other headlines as well. And if it were not for the recovery drives in instance, could we have seen Joshua Downing more closely contested? I definitely think we could have, and will we see that today? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we come into this round, of course, we've got an absolutely packed calendar. We're not going to go all through it again, because we need to focus on the here and now, but noted today, this is the first of our 1-hour feature race round, so 60 minutes, 60 minutes of racing, mixed conditions as well, and sunset conditions as well here in Australia. Indeed, right now we are in the peak of summer, but effectively it is winter time in Australia, given the fact, of course, the southern hemisphere, when the northern hemisphere, such as the United Kingdom, is experiencing its warmest conditions in summer. Meanwhile, the southern hemisphere is the opposite end of the spectrum, so therefore we're expecting relatively cool conditions. However, do keep in mind the fact that we are expecting some rain to arrive, and in terms of when that rain will arrive, well, it's going to be arriving late on in the race, approximately 25 minutes to go, based on the timeline weather we have used, but we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. And after this round, we make it away to Belgium in a week's time for the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. But staying with the here and now, let's talk about our host circuit in a bit more detail. More commonly known as Bathurst in reference to a local city, this circuit, located in the state of New South Wales of Australia, well, its full course is an absolute one to behold. Home, of course, of the Intercontinental GT World Challenge 12-hour event every year, and also, of course, the infamous Bathurst 500. You name it, it races here, from V8 supercars all the way through to Hyundai XLs, and as our drivers take on this 3.86 mile circuit, or 6.21 kilometres in length, well, regardless of the units you use, what stays the same is the number of corners, 23 of total, and we can see them all there on the circuit map provided to us by iRacing.com, and a huge thank you to iRacing as always, not just for the brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. Now, of course, this circuit is not two-dimensional. It is very heavily dependent on elevation change. You have a net elevation change over this circuit from the lowest point to the highest point of 174 metres, from what is Hell Corner at turn number 1 all the way to Skyline at turn number 11. It is a huge elevation change, not quite on the grandiose scale perhaps of the Nürburgring going over the Eiffel Mountains, but to be fair, given its length and its situation, it is one of the most peculiar. And as our drivers roar the way out to Hell Corner and up towards Griffin's Bend, well, that's going to be up the mountain straight they'll go and in towards the start of the mountain segment. Through turns 2 all the way through to 18, we should point out there is a mandatory tow zone in effect, and what this means is for this round specifically, it doesn't apply to every round, just for rounds where you have very tight circuits. If a driver is involved in an incident or makes a mistake and their car is pointing more than 90 degrees away from the right direction, so I pointing towards the next corner, the driver, regardless of the state of the car, is expected to tow. Only in exceptional circumstances, such as, for example, if trying to tow the car would cause more danger to those behind, otherwise the driver must tow the car. If they do not, an incident occurs as a result of them not towing the car, they will be receiving a much harsher punishment than they normally would for causing an incident. So just to remind you, from Griffin's Bend at turn number 2 to Forest Elbow at turn number 18, we do have a mandatory tow zone. So if a driver does get it wrong, the stakes are going to be excruciatingly high today. But as the drivers make the way out of Griffin's Bend, they'll find the road narrows as it gets very narrow towards the cut-in at turns 3 and 4, and it'll be over the rise of Quarry Bend at turns 5 and 6 before they go through the right into left to 6 and 7, and it's the triple left-hand segment of 8, 9 and McPhillamy Park at turn number 10, which throws our drivers at full speed out onto the skyline, the highest point of the circuit, before they start to descend rapidly into the dipper at turns 12, 13 and then all important turn 14. Coming out will be the kink of 15, which could catch a few drivers out, while they make the way into Forest Elbow via 16 and 17. You brake at turn 17 to set up the downhill hairpin at turn number 18, where you can expect some lunges under braking for those the most audacious. And as they make the way out of that corner, it's then out of that, onto the kink of 19 and onto the Conrod Straight. The infamous straight, which will see our drivers plummet downhill from the mountain and in towards the chase chicane at turns 21 and 22 at full speed initially, and then hard onto the brakes for the best part of 160 miles an hour plus as they negotiate the way from the left into right, now to Murray's Bend to complete the lap and do it all over again. Now, we can't bring up speed with the standings coming into this round. They're not readily available. We normally make them available after round number 2. But what we can do is make our way back to circuit side and bring up to speed with who the top 3 are in each of our classes and how qualifying is going on for our drivers. But as the drivers make the way around right now, well, the fastest one out there at this time, it's none other than Connor Pink in the Marlboro McLaren, looking very rapid out there in the Premier and overall considerations. And right, another 103 driver in his McLaren, definitely in his element here today. But keep an eye on, of course, starting with Premier, Menno Bloem, who's currently the 8th fastest in this qualifying session with 20 minutes to go. He's currently your championship leader after one round of racing, indeed converting pole to victory. Although, to be fair, it really was just as much on pace as it was strategy, and he was able to outsmart the Moonshiners Racing Club pair of both Liam Fraser and also Dean Sheasby. It was Sheasby who was the run-up last time out, and well, he was able to convert a third to a second. He is currently second in the championship, and Sheasby showing in his Ferrari 296 that you can teach an old dog new tricks, as the saying goes, although it's no recommendation on his age, to be fair, given the fact, of course, he is a very youthful driver out there, and I do believe quite of a middle age compared to other drivers. And well, I've dug myself a bit of a deep grave there if I've got his age wrong, because he makes his way on through turns 5 and 6 right now. The thing about Dean for this season is going to the Ferrari 296, and it went very well Watkins Glen, and we look forward to seeing what he can do with it here today. He's currently the 3rd fastest in this qualifying session, and we do know he's feeling very comfortable in this car, and well, just taking fuel last time out definitely worked out nicely for him, but he'll be wondering today whether that's going to work out for him again, particularly in a 1-hour race. And well, if he does make it work out, plus finds a bit more pace here, there's no reason why he can't be back on the podium, if not potentially go for his first win of the season. But from one MRC car to another, Liam Fraser currently is the 4th fastest out there, right behind his teammates to the tune of 2,000ths in the Ford Mustang. And well, this car definitely suiting Liam for this season so far. A very powerful 5-litre V8 engine as he roars his way out. Well, of course, we saw him at the other end of the strategic spectrum at Watkins Glen, taking the all-4 tyre change, and he did brilliantly with it, to be fair to him. And you can't take away the fact his lap times were sensational on those fresh tyres, and it enabled him to make his way all the way back up to 3rd place. However, he did recognise after the race that if he hadn't changed all 4 tyres, he could have had a chance at 2nd place, if not challenging for the win. And it really was that, he felt, that gave Menno Bloem the opportunity to break away. And he admitted in his post-race interview as well, the fact that he qualified, he threw everything at the qualifying session, and Bloem having that extra 300ths really was a shock to the system for him, but perhaps they can deliver his own shocking turn. But if that is your top 3 in the Premier class, what about in the club club class? Yep, I was about to say the Evo class there. Goodness me, that is really befuddling my brain at the moment. We'll get it right eventually, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the club class for this season. Evo has been replaced with club. Well, right now, the current provisional pole sitter in club, 6th overall, is none other than Stuart Rice as he makes his way onwards, but he's not inside the top 3 of the championship, although working there with Rachel Hugh, and good to see them both out on the grid together. Rachel, of course, having to miss the season opener due to personal circumstances, and will Stuart back once again. I do believe the trapped nerve has been resolved. It's good to see him back out there, both in the Corvette Z06 GT3R for this season, and of course we saw in the pre-season event at the Mobility Resort Motegi that Rachel Hugh was definitely full of fire and firm fight in her own Corvette, and we look forward to seeing how this is going to pan out for her this season. Of course, she has already committed round 1 as a drop score, so she needs to be on the grid now for the remaining rounds of the season to get the maximum possible points available. But do not count out Rachel Hugh as much as Stuart Rice is up there right now, and Rice goes into 4th place at 202.807. That's sensational. But right now, let's come to the theme of who your championship leader is, and what it is this man for Type 2 Racing, Joshua Downing, in the very definitive liveried McLaren. And of course, he did have that altercation with Mikhail Salkuni, and after that disappointing qualifying points, he went very aggressive in the race to carve his way through, and it worked out, and he'll want to get on top of his qualifying points as quickly as he can. And the reason for that is, well, not down to his racing ability, but the more you leave up to the race itself, the harder you make your races, because then you've got to really fight your way forward. And if you're at a circuit such as Bathurst, where overtaking it is by no means anywhere near as easy, well, suddenly you make life very difficult for yourself, and making those overtakes, well, where do you make them happen? Do you try to brave it too wide over the mountain when you don't normally go there? Do you force a move here into Forest Elbow, which is not impossible? We see it time and time again. Or alternatively, do you try and work out some magic on strategy? Do you try to undercut everybody or overcut everyone? But Downey will be worried about the qualified session first and foremost. And right now, 15th overall, but do keep in mind that from here to Jack Giles in 9th place, who's the second of your club drivers at this time, as Simon Hunt propels himself up to 10th place there. Well, right now, from Downing to Giles, it is only 3.5 tenths of a second. That is 1 sector's worth of time that can be found, and should he find it, he could jump all the way to that top 10, and just like that, we could see the qualified order completely turn upside down in club. Now, as for your second place driver in the club championship after 1 round, it's starting Racing's purple machine of Michael Rhodes. We've got a few drivers there stepping aside, using the runoff area coming down from Skyline to Dipper, and well, as we said earlier on, Michael Rhodes, second place in qualified. He looked quick at the start, but an early instant where it almost forced him to retire from the race on lap number 6, and well, in the end, it was in a situation whereby he got the car sorted out, got it repaired, and got himself onto a phenomenal recovery drive. And he will be one to watch this season, because Michael can put things together and avoid the incidents. There's no reason why he cannot become a championship contender very early on. And meanwhile, currently in 3rd in the championship after what was a bit of a frustrating way it went, and the Verano Esports driver here. And indeed, I do know we've got a few Verano Esports fans in the YouTube chat, of which we'll acknowledge the chat very shortly and say hello to a few of you tuning in. It's Mikhail Salkuni, the man who took pole position, but in the end, it was not worth the result, given the fact it all went wrong in a bit of contact with Joshua Downing. But as we said earlier on, the term sorted it out. They both acknowledged what they could have done better, and they moved onwards. And that's the great thing here at SimRacing International. With our stewarding process, we do encourage drivers to talk to each other as much as possible. Once they've cooled down, of course. Tempers are always hot after a race. It doesn't matter how cool a cucumber you are as a driver. Everyone gets a little bit heated, but ultimately, you realise you're all human. Discuss what happened. If you think there really was malice after that, or that it was inappropriate, then report it. The stewarding process encourages an initial conversation between the drivers involved in the instance. They understand what exactly could have been done better. And it's when it breaks down in that negotiation, that's when it normally goes to the steward and gets the full investigation. It reduces the number of tickets that have to be done, but at the same time as well, it really gets drivers to think about what they're doing on the circuit and respect their rivals week in, week out. We're at 14 minutes left in this qualified session. Lap time still coming in. Sheasby goes back up to 3rd overall at 202.687. James Fraser, meanwhile, and the 3rd member of the Moonshiners Racing Club out here today, where he's currently in 38 for 205.973. He's currently the 17th fastest in the club class. A few more drivers leaving the pit lane there, as I do believe Govind Suresh being one of them in his McLaren. And whilst they make the way onwards, a few drivers yet to put a time on the board, including Ben Wayne, Andy Rudy, Steve Hughes, Peter Armstrong, Peter Florian, and also Ellen Olsen. And well, here's a name we were expected to do well. It was a bit of a frustrated day at Watkins Glen. Did quite work out for Peter in the 147, but right now, what could he do here today as he weaves from side to side down the Converse Straight in his Porsche 992, trying to get as much tyre temperature as he possibly can? He's getting himself ready for a flying lap as he makes his way through the left into right. Right now, just keeping it nice and smooth. As meanwhile, Mark de Vries smooths his way to the top of the field and toes the pit lane immediately. A 202.3, a staggering lap that is for the SimRacing Team Lowlands driver, and doing what Menno Bloem did at Watkins Glen, but this time showing the shoe is on the other foot. But let's say hello to a few of you in the YouTube chat, including none other than Denny Ploger. Good evening to you, Denny. I hope you're doing well. We also say hello there to Bakar Abasek, and also to none other than Mad Season 1736, who had to retract his message. Not quite sure why, but I hope you're doing well. E-Way Mad Season. And we also do say hello there to Andrea Marchetti, who says good evening, everyone, and especially good old Paul. And thank you, Andrea. And to be fair, it's good to see you tuning in. And, well, of course, one of our big fan favourites out there being none other than Gianluca Rospo, currently in the pit lane. And, well, he's amalgamated with what is the Spectre Racing Mercedes there, I believe, of Jordan Butler, but he will leave the pit lane in due course. He's currently 42nd overall and 23rd in Premier. And he makes his way out. I somehow get the feeling he knows he's on camera right now, or if not, that's just coincidental timing. Let's see if Rosberg can make his way a bit further up the order for Deeb Motorsport. Now, talking a little bit about the weather today and the importance of qualifying. Firstly, the weather. What are we expecting? Well, you're seeing dry conditions at the moment, and we show you weather on the right-hand side of your screen. We do have an ambient temperature of 90 degrees centigrade and a track temperature of 20 degrees centigrade. We've got plenty of cloud here, and it is indeed mid to late afternoon at the moment in Australia. And we will be heading towards sunset conditions as the day goes on. So therefore, temperatures will be low throughout the day, as we do see the Deeb Motorsport car there, trying to figure out where to go out of Griffin's Bend, given the fact that it's got the Yellow Racing Porsche making its way on past. However, one of the things will be is the arrival of rain. We're expecting the cloud to really build up as the race goes on, and the rain is timelined. We should emphasise timelines here. That's the forecasting system we're using. We are not using the forecast weather system. So we say when the weather's going to change. We expect the rain to fall somewhere around 25 minutes remaining in the race. Now, there can be a bit of variability in that. It can arrive a little bit sooner. It can arrive a little bit later. And when it does come, it will be light rain. So there's an expectation that drivers will need to transition onto the wet tyre most likely to get to the end of the race, unless they can find a way to survive on the slick. But if so, it'll be very interesting indeed. And they'll have to be razor quick with regards to making the right call to transition the tyre, because otherwise they're on the slick when it should be the wet tyre. They could go spin into a barrier, or vice versa. If they go into the wet tyre too soon, they're going to cook the tyre before it's really had a chance to settle down, and that is going to be the tough challenge here with these mixed weather race conditions. Now, keep in mind, of course, that we always do this at SimRacing International. If we've got mixed conditions, we do use a timeline system rather than a forecast system, and that is because the high unpredictability of forecasted weather on iRacing. It's not a critique, it's just the fact whereby when we do see forecasted weather, if rain comes, sometimes it can be monsoon season, enough rain to red flag a race, and we don't want to go racing that where possible, so we try to keep the rain sensible and predictable, and that way everyone can have good fun in mixed weather, which is what we like to see. Of course, a bit of a challenge here at Bathurst, no doubt about it. But that brings us on to our other question: what about qualifying? How important is it going to be? Well, this is a street circuit. Track position is going to be important, as we do see Ross Wheatley, one of the two DC Motorsport cars that you will see in Split B. Out of the four of them, of course, in Split A, you will have Jared Love and Peter Duke. At Split B, you do have Ross Wheatley and also Dave Collier. We'll come on to a little story about Dave very shortly as Wheatley takes his way around, and as he does so, well, qualifying being so important, you can attack here, but keep in mind the fact it will be relegated to the straight, and most of the attacking you will do in the pit lane. But with the mixed weather, that could be a great opportunity for a driver who's not done too well to suddenly make up a load of the places by picking the right time to come in to change tyre. With it being a 60-minute race as well, we are expecting this to be a one-stop race where possible, and with the rain arriving towards the second half of the race, it will make things interesting, because if the rain comes quite late, if it comes later than when it's forecast, so let's say it actually comes 40 minutes into the race, that is when the fuel tanks are going to look dangerously low. Nobody wants to pit before the rain arrives, because otherwise you have to make 2 pit stops should the rain become egregious enough to force you onto the wet tyre. So this could be a race where a lot of fuel saving at the start will actually help drivers later on, and it is playing that game of making sure you've got the right amount of fuel to get you to that pit stop you need to make, rather than forcing you to make 2 pit stops. So you can imagine a lot of the teams, they will have their strategists on the pit wall, keep an eye on the weather forecast and keep an eye on the weather pattern, and making sure they know when that rain is about to fall. But we said about DC Motorsport and about Dave Collier. Now, I need to correct something that I did mention on the broadcast last week, which is what DC Motorsport stands for. Motorsport seems obvious, but what does the DC stand for? I said at the time it was Dave Collier Motorsport. Not quite. Interestingly, Dave got in touch with me after race. He absolutely loved the broadcast. We'd love to see him out there alongside the DC Motorsport team. And I had a good little message exchange with him. And what he's explaining is that DC in DC Motorsport actually stands for Duke Collier Motorsport. So the surnames of Peter Duke and Dave Collier. Now, there's a great bit of background here. Now, you've heard me talk a lot about Peter Duke in the past, racing as part of Formula Vauxhall and also part of Formula Ford or FF1600. Well, the background between the two of them, and this is where it really gets interesting, is that Peter and Dave were fierce rivals in FF1600 back in 1993, and it usually in the races saw one of them winning the race and the other not finishing. So it got that fierce, they make contact, or indeed have moments where they run each other off the road, etc., as I understand it. And then they carried on that rivalry later on in the 1990s in the United Kingdom into Formula Vauxhall. Now, they didn't speak from 1995 all the way through to, coincidentally, when they ended up in the same sim racing league, in an Irish league, all the way about 2 years ago. So back in 2024, suddenly they bumped into each other in a sim racing league, said hello to each other, got chatted again, and decided to form DC Motorsport. And it is crazy to think how 30 years can essentially annul a rivalry between two drivers in the world of real motorsport. Indeed, they are veterans of racing open-wheelers, very talented drivers, and then create a friendship through sim racing and will now form a team. And that is a story that I will always remember now. And well, they're brilliant, no doubt about it. Brilliant characters off the circuit and absolutely fantastic characters on the circuit. A huge thank you to Dave for sharing that story. I know Peter shared part of the stories in the past, but we've now got the full picture there as he makes his way on around. Well, Dave was also saying to me, the team, well, in terms of how prepared they are for this one, I don't think they think anyone could be prepared for the fault of wet weather at Bathurst, but they've given it a good go and they're looking forward to an interesting race at least. And we look forward to seeing an interesting performance from them, including, of course, Dave and none other than what is his teammate out there, and that being his driver teammate of Ross Wheatley. But as they make the way on through, well, we need to get you an on-board lap with one of our drivers, no doubt about it. And who's going to give us an on-board lap today? As we say hello to Marco Pitaluga, who says good evening, everyone, and good race. And indeed, Marco, good evening to you, good sir, and we look forward to a great race ahead. And indeed, if you're tuning in right now and you're a little bit shy, perhaps you haven't said hi, don't be afraid. We don't bite here at SimRacing International. The only biting you'll see is if somebody gets it wrong on the brake, and then they'll definitely be biting their carbon ceramic brakes to the point they'll probably be triggering their ABS, but you won't see any huge lockups. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to lock things down by jumping on board with other drivers. And to do so today, we're going to come to the privateer of Eddie Theobald as he gets ready to go on to another lap in his BMW M4 Evo. But he makes his way into the final quarter, and as he makes his way around, here we go then, ladies and gentlemen, for a flying lap of the Mount Panorama Circuit in Australia. So, heading over to the right-hand side of the circuit, and as he does so, looks to his brake mark. It will be just after the 100 metre board, braking about 70 metres of quarter apex. Ooh, that's a big twitch on entry there. That is oversteer to understeer creeping through the car. And well, that's normally where the car doesn't want to settle down. But Theobald does clear the opening corner. Hell corner, of course, named after the idea in folklore. Motorcycle races, they made an error there. They'd normally go into the tree on the outside of the corner, pass away due to the incident, and then go to the 9th circle of hell. But as he makes his way up in towards turn 2, well, this could be the first circle of hell, given it's Bathurst. And as he makes his way through Griffiths Bend, well, a lovely line there from Theobald, breaking at 100 metre board and carrying all the speed. Now into the cutting he goes. As he does so, they're flat out through turn 3 and off the throttle onto the brake as late as possible as he cuts it as tight to the apex. Now, make his way through Quarry Corner, turn number 5, and into the unsighted turn 6-7 combination. You turn in for 6 and then straighten the steel out and just full throttle all the way through 7. Now into the triple left, 8 followed by 9. Here it's a lift and coast through the corner, get as late to that apex as possible, then back on full throttle. Now dab the brake, hold in 5th initially, but will he drop to 4th? He takes too much curb, and it causes the car to wash out there on the right hand side. And well, for Theobald, that's not going to be a good run of the lap now as he comes down through Skyline, but he carries on, trail braking his way down towards the dipper, coming all the way down to second gear, right into left hand, and now into the right hand kick at turn number 15, then over to left for turn 16, then into Forest Elbow. You brake at 17, you can't see the corner that you're braking forward, about 250 metres away you start, and then suddenly Forest Elbow arrives on the scene in front of you, and then he makes his way down the Conroy Straight. And as he does so, building up the speed here, up into 5th gear, now getting ready for 6th. But of course, the middle sector's lap compromised by his mistake at McPhillamy Park, but he did very well to grab the car back together, and you take a little bit of curb on entry, but no more than that, as otherwise the front right will be pitched up, and you will not be able to control the car. That's flat out through the kink, and now into the chase chicane. Braking now, 150 metres of quarter apex, down to 3rd gear, joins the dots together beautifully there through turns 21 and 22. And now for Theobald coming over to the right-hand side for Murray's Bend at 23. Looks to his right-hand side, braking about 70 metres and quarter apex into this downhill braking zone. Holding 2nd gear there as he clears the corner. The car trying to swap ends on him there. And Theobald attacking hard, but of course, slight compromise at 204.575. And what I suspect, if he had got McPhillamy Park together, that would have been a low 203. Meanwhile, Dean Sheasby has gone purple in the middle sector. Sheasby is flying right now in that Ferrari 296. Can he potentially swipe pole position away from Mark De Vries? And right now, the gap between the turn 46 thousandths. Sheasby looking quick on a personal best, no doubt about it. This is for overall and Premier pole position. We'll come on to our club drive shortly, as it's now Mikhail Salkuni, who is ahead of Stuart Rice by the best part of a 10th. Salkuni putting some magic together. But as we do see Sheasby make his way through the final corner, what's it going to be this time for the MRC drive? Can he take provisional pole? The answer is going to be to that. Yes, it is, by almost 3/10 jumps there. Dean Sheasby at 202.010. That is going to be tough to beat. And De Vries is in the pit lane. He's out the car. I don't think De Vries expected to be beat, or he's giving it everything. And this may be pole position for Sheasby. But right now, as we do see more time, James Howarth there. And will the dexterous motorsport Sandra puts himself onto the front row. The V8s are coming out. And right now, the Ford Mustang driver pushing onwards, trying to chase after the 6th end of Sheasby's lap time. But still, Sheasby 2.7 tenths quicker. Howarth there just squeezing ahead of De Vries by the best part of 22,000. So, well, if we do get a chance to see him, we will catch up with James Howarth after the race, because we do owe him an interview. We didn't interview him last week. He was one of the drivers who volunteered, but we ran out of time. But we also welcome to the grid for this season John Treen in the formal fashion, as he makes his way down through the quarters right now. Of course, we did get an opportunity to speak to Treen. We did get an opportunity to see him in round number 1. He missed the round, but he's here today. And right now, John's doing a fantastic job. Currently 5th fastest, the highest of your McLaren drivers. And runs it quite close to the exit wall there, but just about keeps it away from danger. But coming into the club, I said we would, and there's your Verano Esports driver, Marcus Clayton, the second of the 2 drivers here in the club class of Verano Esports. As we say hello to the #1 Verano Esports fan of Kitty's Mad there. Going to shout out to Marcus and Mikkel for tonight, and indeed for Verano as a whole. Well, it's not quite the same. We don't have Kitty's Mad in the YouTube chat, but I hope you're doing well. I'm doing fantastic. Although it's getting a bit warm in the commentary booth. Oh, as that's getting a bit too hot and bothered for Clayton. Going a bit too wide out of turn number 2, hits the barrier, and that is going to be his qualifying session done and dusted. Not the way he wanted it to go whatsoever. But meanwhile, we do see making his way on around Daniel Mellor, the 5M racing driver, currently 22nd, almost 2 seconds off the overall pole time. But look at the gaps there as you go into the field. If you exclude what is the astonishing top 5 laps, then you go from Menno Bloem, you are looking at no more than half a tenth between a car. Typically only a couple of hundredths, if not thousands. This is a qualifying session that is looking razor tight. But James Howarth might feel as though he's got a bit more. He has gone purple in the middle sectors, Howarth. This is going to be his penultimate lap as Sheasby tries to raise the bar. Misses out by 11 thousandths to Sheasby. So if Sheasby's got more time out there, he's trying to find it and deploy it. But meanwhile, Howarth comes out the final quarter. What's this going to be? That looks absolutely hooked up. And the answer is going to be as he crosses the line. Almost, but not quite. Shaves 2 tenths off to a 202.070. Howarth does not take pole, and that's the best he's got. Meanwhile, the clock goes to 0. And as our drivers now are on overtime, they are allowed to finish the lap they're on. They're not allowed to start a new one. And as we do see there, Joshua Downey make his way down. Well, absolutely pushing on as much as he can here. Can he get himself back onto the front row of club, or get himself in pole position versus Salcudi and Rice? Or is this going to be another 4th place start here today? Comes across the line, he jumps into Michael Rhodes, beating him by 2 thousandths. But Rhodes is on a lap, we believe. So therefore, Rhodes is going to be one of the very last drivers to come on around. Meanwhile, looking further down the order, Barry Wenman out there as well. And right now, Wenman trying to give it a little bit more with the Dexterous Motorsports Magenta McLaren. Now see what we can get together as Ellen Olsen. Let's give a shout out to her. Still pushing on here for Validity V Racing. And does she get a valid lap on the board? The answer is going to be not quite for Ellen. So she'll be starting from the back of the field at 49th. But to be fair, there could be some opportunities depending on how the race goes. Eduardo Andino coming through the final corner. Following there, I believe the car of Dave Collier to the line. The LS Racing driver trying to pick up a sneaky toe. This is looking to be a better lap for Andino. And in the end, he does take a whole second off of it. But it's not enough to beat Max Dean, who will, for the Gav Max Racing outfit, be staying at 45th there, unless he can provide a bit more. But I think he is on a cool-down lap at this point. So we haven't got too many more drivers out there at the moment. The only driver we believe who may be on a valid lap is Barry Wenman. He is making his way down Conrad at the moment. And as we say hello to Barry Race, who says, off to Brands Hatch this weekend for the Super Free. Wishing good luck to Josh Downing. And, well, good to see you tuned in, Mr. Berry. And we're part of the Type 2 racing outfit and very much cheering on his fellow friend as the drivers make the way out through. I hope you have a good time at the Brands Hatch Super Free. Unfortunately, I'm going to be at Stetson for the weekend, helping present the Trucks vs. TCR event there. And indeed, it's going to be a bumper weekend. Otherwise, I'll be going to Brands Hatch myself. But Stetson's not too far away. But right now, let's stay where we are today at Bathurst as Barry Wenman heads towards the time line. As he does so, well, he jumps up to 21st. A good lap there, a 203.781. And, well, that puts him right between Ludbrook and Bostock by the best part there of what is 6 thousandths ahead of Ludbrook, and in turn to Bostock, just shy of a tenth there, but so close. And, well, James Howarth saying ran out of fuel on exit of the last quarter, so he was literally on the lightest possible car, and Howarth could have taken pole position if he had not done that. Well, thank you for the heads up, Taito Nation, or James Howarth. Appreciated the insight there. But as all drivers cooling down, and Max Dean right now just simply taking his way home at Bathurst Town, well, as he rolls away between the corners, keeping in mind the fact that during the day, these are public roads that are being driven in during what is Race day, all the local businesses and driveways are shut off for the residents, and it is turned into a fully fledged race circuit, and that's what is known as a street circuit, even though it doesn't necessarily look like one. But as Dean makes his way across the timeline, well, he does not improve, and that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. We look to the scenic view, and it's Dean Sheasby who takes his maiden pole position for the season, overall and in Premier, and he'll be joined on the front row by James Howarth, who has just missed out by 600ths of a second, and then we'll see Mark DeVries and Liam Fraser behind on row 2. Meanwhile, 8th overall on pole once again for club, it's Mikel Salcuni ahead of Stuart Rice, who takes his best qualifying points of the season so far with 9th place overall, 2nd in class, and then we'll see Joshua Downing and Michael Rhodes in 12th and 13th, completing the top 4 of club. And well, an absolutely packed field here today, no doubt about it. And when we now do have, of course, our 5-minute warm-up before we do go green flag racing. But as all drivers get themselves set and ready to go, well, we've got a little bit of time before we do go racing. So, of course, we have the question now of what's going to be the game plan. Well, remembering the weather, of course, our drivers do know the rain's going to arrive. And we did have to explain to a few drivers, not because they were not going to listen, but for the simple reason of the fact they're perhaps not used to timeline weather, where it is weather that occurs at particular points in time or around those points in time. So what do you do as a driver now? Well, you make sure you've got your race setup on the car, firstly. Also, you continue to look at the forecast. There is a forecast available in iRacing. We cannot show you it. We don't have it available here as part of our production program, but you have a forecast and it will tell you when rain is expected to approximately arrive. So that may have moved by a minute or two. That's going to be important information because our drivers will then need to start thinking about the fuel calculation and think, okay, how long do I need to go on the fuel I've got to get myself there? Do they need to put a full tank? Typically they will. Sometimes drivers do go for a slightly lesser tank, with the full process being lighter car, less fuel, therefore they can go a little bit quicker. But I suspect everyone will top the fuel tank up as much as possible to that 70% fuel tank to give themselves the biggest possible strategic window, and that is the challenge here today. You need to buy yourself the time in the first stint to be ready to transition in the second stint and not have to make 2 pit stops. If you have to make 2, well, keep in mind, of course, the fact fuel will go in first and it's the tyre change. Well, per tyre, it's 2 seconds to get the car up onto the jacks initially, and it's 5 seconds from tyre to tyre to tyre to tyre. Add it all together, that's approximately 21 to 23 seconds stationary in the pit lane just for the tyre change. So the fuel going in the car, we suspect that's going to be another 15 to 18 seconds. Add it all together, and you are looking at a pit stop before you leave the pits. If you do it all in one go, that is going to be a pit stop stationary time of somewhere in the region of around about none other than 40 to 45 seconds. And entering the pit lane, this is one of the shortest pit lanes on the calendar, you're going to be losing about a minute in the pits, and that's why you only want to make 1 visit to the pits if you can help yourself. But we will see what is to be. But as we do look around, well, we look to Gianluca Rospo, the DB Motorsport driver, and as we said in round number 1, if looks can score points, I tell you one thing, with his profile photo, he is looking absolutely as cool as a superstar there. And I think Tom Cruise would definitely be claiming that he's been given a run for his money. But right behind, let's not forget about Simon Hunt. And Simon Hunt definitely improved over the course of the qualifying session in club. Looked quite impressive early on, to be fair, in his Aston Martin V8 Vantage Evo. And the Aston Martin is a car not to be ignored. It's not the quickest car out there in terms of one that pays, but it is a car that is very comfortable for a driver, and also it's a car that goes very well on strategy. It's one of those cars whereby it's always giving you very pleasant feedback on how the tyres are going and also how the fuel consumption is going. And with its rather beefy twin turbo system, well, the downside of this car is the fact you do have to use a lot of fuel to get the most out of it, but the flip side is in wet weather conditions, you don't have that much torque low down in the RPM bands. You gain it all as you go up the RPM in each gear, so it actually means this is a very comfortable car to drive in the wet, and you don't necessarily need to turn up the electronics, particularly the traction control or the TCS system, as high as some other cars. Of course, all these GT3s, they have a wide range of electronic systems on them, the 2 key ones being traction control and ABS, anti-lock braking system, and you have wet weather settings for those, and you have dry settings for them. It's a gauge typically, differs from car to car, but typically the gauge will go from 1 to 12 in both systems, whereby essentially 1 is the lowest amount of input, and then around about 8 to 9 on that scale, that's where you go into your wet weather modes, where they're very aggressive, particularly for the traction control, whereby if it feels like the tyres are slipping at all, suddenly it completely kills the throttle in order to make sure that the rear tyres do not slip aggressively, and that's going to be a fault there. What our drivers do in terms of manipulating the traction control and the ABS to get the most out of the car. As we look to James Bostock, as he makes one around for GPX Sport Onyx. With a minute to go, he's decided to forego any sort of hydration break. We're not going to, ladies and gentlemen. We're definitely going to take a bit of a hydration break here in the Conte booth. We have a quick sip of water, because something tells me we're not going to get a chance to when we do go green flag racing. So bear with us. We're going to just take a sip, and we'll be all set for the race. And while James Bossett there decides to park up the car on the escape road at the Dipper, our water's been consumed, we're all ready to go, and Rob Gregg for MRC Rebels, well, right now definitely looking to rebel his way up the field. Didn't have the strongest of qualified performances in the club today, but to be fair, we know Rob is a bit more of a race driver rather than a qualifying pace driver, so therefore his thought process will be, most likely, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Well, to be fair, he's going to need to finish quite strong here if he wants to make this work out. But with the warm-up almost complete, a couple of lap times coming in, but these lap times worth nothing. As Matthew Massey, of course, parking up there for Spectra Racing, decides to head back to the pit lane. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the clock is closed on this warm-up session. It's time to make our way to the grid. It's time for 60 minutes of racing in round number 2 of the Thursday GT3 Championship Season 13, brought to you by SimRacing International, and you're tuned to Split B from Bathurst. And as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll all line up for our one and only race today. It is Dean Sheasby who takes pole position for Moonshiners Racing Club Rebels, joined on the front row by James Howard for Dexterous Motorsport Siam. Now row number 2, it's Mark DeVries for SimRacing Team Lowlands ahead of MRC Bootleggers Liam Fraser. Row 3 is John Treen and none other than Menno Bloem. The Axis is what with Simcoach Stride, just pipping Menno Bloem to the post for SimRacing Team Lowlands. Connor Pink started off strong in qualifying, but was gradually moved back to 7th. But to be fair, he'll still be happy with where he's starting ahead of Mikhail Salcuni, the Italian making it 2 out of 2 in club for pole position. Behind the front of Esport driver is Stuart Rice of Blue Sky Esports and Eddie Fearbold, the prize who completes your top 10. In 11th, we have Matthew Massey for Spectre Racing moving forward in qualifying. Good effort from him ahead of Joshua Downing for Type 2 Racing. Michael Rhodes starts in 13th for Darkwing Racing ahead of Simon Hunt for Quatermass Motorsports. And then we have Jack Giles in 15th for Eurotitans Endurance Pink ahead of Dave Collier for DC Motorsport. Behind the Irishman, it's the American of Verano Esports Marcus Clayton ahead of Danny Weir for Dexterous Motorsport Siam. And we have Ross Wheatley for DC Motorsport and James Bostock for GPX Sport Onyx. Then in 21st place, we have Barry Wenman ahead of John Ludbrook with none other than what will be the machinery of Michael Lecco, the Czechia driver, starting 23rd ahead of Daniel Miller. It'll be Ashley Shucksmith in 25th ahead of none other than what will be the machinery there of Bergsma, starting 26th. And there'll be Robin Aston ahead of Paul Mayer in the 14th row. Row 15, we have Rachel Hugh and Jordan Butler, and it will be on row number 16, Gianluca Rospo and Peter Florian. Row 17, Martin Brandon and Ross Gillett, ahead of James Fraser and Hussein Sarkadesla, with Christopher Petty and Andy Shell on row 19, followed up by Rob Gregg and none other than Barry Wayne. Then it will be from Ben Wayne down to 41st for Steve Hughes and Gavin Corby ahead of Rob Mackay and Govinda Suresh. Then we do have Max Dean and Eduardo Dina on row 23 ahead of Ellen Olsen and Andy Rudy. And Peter Armstrong completes the field. We got through it, ladies and gentlemen, just about, because it's time for none other than what will be Dean Sheasby to take us away for 60 minutes of racing. And just like that, as quick as we complete the run down the grid, we are go, go, go here at Bathurst. As Dean Sheasby roars his way into turn number 1, and James Herf alongside as he looks round, but he can't quite make it work. So drivers go to town immediately here. Very little time to warm up the tyres. This is going to be about patience at the start, but they make the way too wide now, all the way up the hill, and you can see all 48 cars gradually coming into your view. And right now, James Herf trying to blast his way past Sheasby. The Dexterous Motorsport Sign driver may have gone with less rear wheel on the car, and if so, this is going to work out nicely for him. Can he beat Sheasby into that braking zone? And he will do. And if he does, it's going to work out very nicely. But Sheasby says, no, I've got the grip on the outside. So Sheasby keeps the throttle pinned as he makes well through. Sheasby's not going to fall over. So Sheasby takes the lead back into the cutting. Liam Fraser trying to help his teammates out here. And Howarth goes sideways. It's a disaster on lap 1 again for James Howarth. It's into the barrier. And as all the field comes through, he immediately toes the pit lane. Great awareness there from Howarth, as much as the temptation would be. In the field, there's a car stuck on the inside there. We can't quite get the camera angle, and everybody has come to a halt. They're just trying to make the way through. And I think cars have now towed to the pit lane. But everyone has done exceptionally well there to get the car stopped. And will the blimp camera a bit too far away to give us any graphic detail? But we have seen a sizable split in the field as a result of Big Instant. But everyone has made it through, minus the cars that have had to tow. So well done to everyone. They've all done brilliantly there. It's not easy, and it could be an absolute disaster and a domino effect on the mountain. But not here today as everyone carries on. Oh, Eddie Fearbolt's to the grass. Now he's going to be careful here because he is pointing away. He should in theory tow, and he will do so immediately. I think he wanted to turn it around. Then he thought, you know what, as much as I do want to, I've got to respect the rules, and Fearbolt doing exactly that, although the temptation was there. I think he was in the 50-50 zone of he could have turned it around on the grass, but in the end decided not to risk it and risk being called in by the stewards after the race. but as all the drivers make the way through, we will get a replay of what happened at the start in due course, ladies and gentlemen. Fill you with all the facts you need, but right now everyone has done very well outside of those who've fallen foul. Rob Mackay's missing the front bumper there, not quite sure where that's disappeared to for Dexter's Motorsport side, but he'll look to get that back when he can, when he comes in for his pit stop later on. But meanwhile, the leader makes his way to the final corner. It is Sheasby, but look behind. And there is Mark De Vries and John Trade. Well, De Vries had a poor start. He's lost out versus Menno Bloem. Bloem is up into third from sixth. De Vries, meanwhile, dropped down to fourth place. We're starting in third, but to be fair, he's recovering places. But after one lap, it's Sheasby who leads, and Liam Fraser and Menno Bloem. That's your top three. Mark De Vries is fourth, ahead of John Trade and Connor Peake. Stuart Rice, club leader. Where is Mikel Salcuni? That's the question we need an answer to. Something tells me that Salcuni has been caught up in the open lap incident there. I wonder if he was in the heart of it, because he's had to tow back to the pit lane from what I'm gathering in my ears. As Stuart Rice is ahead of Joshua Downing by 3 seconds. And Downing right now, second of your club drives by Rice. He's ahead of the Premier of Massey, and then we do have Rhodes completing your top 10. Danny Weir sits in 11th place, ahead of Simon Hunt, with Jack Giles in 13th. Then we do see Dave Collier and Marcus Clayton completing your top 15. But because of the open lap incident, there has been a bit of a split in the field that's arisen. But to be fair, you can always expect that when an incident occurs. And well, ooh, what's happened here? That is going into Griffin's Bend, and I believe that's actually Sheasby just avoided all the incident. But I think Ross Gillott is also making his way onwards there, and he makes his way around the outside of Ross Wheatley's car that's carried on. Wheatley caught up in that incident, not quite sure what's happened, but what we can see is that several places lost to some drivers, and meanwhile Gianluca Rospo still going to the attack here. He's 26th overall, 16th in class right now of your Premier drivers. We'll over the back of Hussein at Sarah Kadesla, and also Ross Wheatley, but Wheatley trying to get things back together. There's definitely been some drama. Daniel Miller has towed to the pit lane as a result of it, and I believe Steve Hughes also caught up in that. But all of these drivers right now continue to push on here. Well, close race about. Several drivers did decide to start from the pit lane, including Martin Brandon and Gavin Corby. Also, Rob Gregg started from the pit. And well, they decide to play it safe there, which is absolutely fair. You can start from the pit lane. You have an option to, but you have to wait until the entire field has cleared the race start line before you are allowed to start leaving the pit lane. You can't gain an advantage by starting from the pit lane because the field is required to pass a certain point. We do get them through. But Ellen Olsen right now, well, having started all the way back in 47th place, making a very good start. This is the Dutchman, and right now she's pushing on versus Max Dean. But looking back to De Vries versus Train. And John Trade is really got his bit between the teeth right now. The McLaren driver does not want to let De Vries go. But look what this is doing. It's bringing the Marlboro machine of Connor Peake onto the attack here. The priority of the 103. Well, he's looking around the outside right now, but it's not going to be over yet. He won't be lighting the victory cigars until the race is over, or victory cigarette in the case of his sponsor. But as he makes his way out, he's definitely trying to be smoking hot here today, and will pound his way onwards at the moment. I promise you I'll be putting the cigarette jokes away very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't going to become the movie Airplane with regards to them, but right now he's definitely looking to try and make some progress there, and it's definitely being lit up. But as he gets ready to attack Mark De Vries this time, looks to the inside of Griffiths, and it's not going to work out. Stays behind again. Stuart Rice, meanwhile, bit of a lonely run at the moment with a 4-second gap to Joshua Downing. The turn split by Matthew Massey there. The club leaders right now definitely staying in a bit of a comfort zone, although you can see Joshua Downing not as comfortable. He's bringing Michael Rhodes, Danny Weir, Simon Hunt and Jack Giles along with him, and he definitely has got a bit of a rat pack here, all trying to chase after the second spot of the podium. But I think all of them thinking about potentially chasing down Stuart Rice if they can. But at this point of the race, of course, now that things have settled down, only 5 minutes in, you're probably sat there thinking, well, it's a bit too early for that, surely. Well, not really. Remember, we are racing at a circuit where overtaking is a lot more difficult than most circuits. So the idea is now, oh, hold up a second, what's happening here? That's Mark De Vries rejoining. Well, he's lost a rear bumper, and everyone's had to go to the outside of him into a skyline. I think De Vries had a bit of a moment coming into McPhillary Park. He has survived it, but he fits back in 10th place here. The problem is now, he's going to split this long club pack, and I think they're not going to be too pleased at the fact he's got in amongst them all, particularly for Danny Weir, Simon Hunt and Jack Giles, because as I say, we were chasing the guy in front. As you can see, Danny Weir was looking for the move on the inside, but he does not get it there at Forestdale, but doesn't want to risk it too early. He doesn't want to hurt the brakes this early on in the race. But Joshua Downing now, we finds that his fight at the head of a pack of 5 cars suddenly becomes a bit of a personal one between him and Michael Rhodes. And Rhodes, of course, now having the opportunity to flex here in terms of attacking. This was not an opportunity given to Rhodes at Watkins Glen because of the recovery drive he had to put on, but Downing goes defensive. Rhodes looking around the outside, and can Rhodes get this done? Downing's going to make his car nice and wide. Rhodes goes around the outside there, and Michael Rhodes just simply comes through. I think Downing, to be fair, he could have run Rhodes a little bit wider than that, decided not to. And, well, a good run there, no doubt about it, for Michael Rhodes. But Joshua Down, I think, playing the safety card there. Meanwhile, we do see Simon Hunt with a bit of a move on the inside there for Jack Giles. And Giles, in the end, he wanted the inside line. But what it forced him to do is go up on the curb, because he knew at the end of the day that Simon Hunt wasn't going to back out for that. That was an attempt to stick his nose in where it didn't belong. And in the end, Jack realising at last moment, hold up, as Simon Hunt's no fall. He's going to make me cause an instant with him. Meanwhile, Dave Collier gets between the two of them now. And Collier moving forward. He's gone from 10th to 8th in the Premier Class. And from 16th to 13th overall. And I don't think Collier's done yet for places to be gained. Looking back to Govind Suresh as he makes his way onwards. And well, I do apologise for referring to it as Govinda Suresh early on. I did get a little bit rushed through going for the grid, ladies and gentlemen, and of course trying to remember all the drivers' names. I do try and do it without script, to be fair. And well, when you've got to rush through them like that, I'll learn them all as the season goes on. But the chap's motorsport driver right now making his way onwards. And I'm not trying to make excuses for myself. It's so great to see fresh blood here on the grid for this season as they make their way on. And meanwhile, Max Dean and Martin Brandon make their way onto the pedals board. And as they do, the Gav Max Racing driver here feeling a bit of pressure. Martin Brandon looks to the inside, and well, that's going to be smooth as you like. And the Access Sport Simworks driver not afraid to get stuck in there. And a lovely move from your 236 driver. Now place gain and more to come. As his next target, we have Eduardo Andino for 15th place. Oh, and Suresh is into the barrier, and it slides to the other side of the road. And Suresh's race, I think, will be done to the pit lane for that. He tries to get it moving, and I think in the end, that is going to be staying stationary for a long time unless he gets it towed. But a bit of an unfortunate moment there for Suresh. We'll try and get a replay of that when we can. But meanwhile, Brandon already going on the attack here as we ride aboard with the 236 driver. And right now, I tell you one thing, I don't know what Martin's had for dinner today, but if it is curry, well, he's definitely had a spicy one, because he is absolutely on fire right now attacking. And will make his way down through the corners here. Well, big mistake there for Andino, and immediately Brandon actually switches back to think that he can compensate for it. But then Andino gets the car together just about, and Martin Brandon, I think, missed out on opportunity. I thought he thought the instant for Andino was going to be a lot worse than what it was in reality, so therefore doesn't really gain. But as they make their way down the back straight, well, Barry Race asking commentators curse with regards to Govind Suresh, quite possibly, to be fair. And indeed, I'm not afraid of an accidental commentator's curse or two, although I am scared of it, to be fair, when I do trigger it. But nobody right now has called me out on it, to be fair. But here comes Martin Brandon, looking to the outside as he goes for it into the chase. Well, he's going to be on the inside here. Surely this is going to be said and done. And well, he's just got to get the car stopped now. And the LS Racing car, Andino, does not fight it too hard, because Brandon had cleared him under braking. And we'll try and come back here now in towards Murray's corner. And Andino thinks about it once, thinks about it twice, but in the end does not go for it on the price and simply stays behind. But from there, James Bostock and Barry Wemman, they're looking at swapping places, as it's going to be Bostock on the left of your picture, Wemman on the right, Wemman on the racing line, and outruns Bostock there. But I think Bostock right now playing the bigger picture game, which is there's no need. Oh, what's happened there? And that is the car, Dave Collier, in pieces on the exit of turn number 2. And well, I think right now he'll need to get the car towed when he can. I think so shaken by it, he finally gets the car towed. And well, to be fair, when you're in a big instant like that, the last thing you are thinking is, I need to tow this car. The first thing you're thinking is, oh good lord, what's happened? And this is sim racing, this is not real life racing, but the emotions and the feelings are real. And also these sim rigs, particularly if you're on a direct drive wheel and are running a high force feedback setting, when you have an impact with the wall with another driver, you've got to get your hands away from the steering wheel straight away. You can break fingers and thumbs from those direct drive wheels very quickly indeed. I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, from personal experience. 2 weeks into owning a direct drive wheel, almost broke my right thumb because I had it hooked into the steering wheel in a GT race when I put it into the wall at this very circuit. But as Gianluca Rosberg goes on, Ross Wheatley and Hussein Sarkodesta right now are in front of him. And these three both trying to, well, all three of them trying to make ground. Ross Wheatley's trying to recover the ground he's lost, really. Hussein Sarkodesta, meanwhile, has had a flyer of this race so far. And the GPX Simsport Onyx driver makes his way down through the corners for GPX Simsport Onyx. And well, he's gone from 22nd in the Premier Class up to 12th. And there's more places to be gained if he keeps his head down. But a shout out to this man of Ross Gillett in the fact that the privateer from Wales is out there right now and he is racing. Now, that does sound a little bit condescending, but please bear with me and I'll explain why. He was on the grid for round number 1, but he did have to retire before he could actually go racing. And that was because of the inconsistency of his internet connection. And well, he said today, coming into this round, he hasn't had his internet connection looked at by his internet service provider. However, he was having it looked at as of the 15th of July. Well, of course, that's in 6 days' time, and he promised that if things were not safe, he would be retiring for this race again. But the fact that he's out there right now, and I'm not going to put the camera on him for too long, just because I don't want to put the commentator's cursor on it, suddenly breaks his internet connection. But Ross Gillett right now out there, running in 10th place, having started 13th in club. Great to see the Welshman out there. I'm really pleased for him, no doubt about it, and hopefully we get to see him all the way over the distance of this race, although to be fair, he's got the pressure of 3 Premier drives behind him very shortly, and they'll be happy to see him on the grid, but they'll also be happy to see the back of him when they can, as they make the way on past him, or they'll try to. Sarkadessa's going to be the first one to do it, if he can, but the Ferrari driver here is definitely having to dig it a bit deep, and in the end he'll get that done on the inside, and Gillett does not fight it, knowing that there's still another 2 to come, and then Andy Chell's 1.5 seconds behind. There is Chell, and right now you can see, just following on, thinking about what's going on, as Gillett goes a bit defensive there versus Wheatley, and he's going to hold the position for now. But as we do have a bit of a lull in the battle in for a brief moment, let's take a look back at some of the big moments of this race, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly what happened on lap number 1. Now, this was the James Howarth incident. Can we get a better camera angle of this? This was the incident where he was trying to battle with Sheasby for the lead, made his way into turn 3, and went wide there, and the rear of the car let go, and it went to the barrier, and unfortunately at that point the car got hooked. Now, he towed to the pit lane immediately, but then everyone had to slow down. We believe Mikhail Salkuni was involved in a secondary incident, so this was the man who was right towards the front of the club cars, lost the rear light Howarth, car went sideways, got it together, and then in the space he tried to thread the needle, and unfortunately got caught there, Eddie Fearbold, and towed to bits immediately. Fearbold, meanwhile, this is what it looked like on board Fearbold's car as he made his way through. Salkuni right in front. Let's listen to him. Oh, there was contact there under braking. That explains it. And, well, he got it settled. And into that space again, a further tiny touch there. And Fearbold had to stop at that point. He had nowhere to go. And, well, you look behind, and Fearbold had to reverse the car to get it to go forward. It was too steep of an incline to start it in first gear. He got it going, and everyone went safe there. Brilliant awareness of everybody involved. They all stopped up immediately. Well, I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, 10 out of 10. If we were giving points away for a brilliant craftsmanship, this was James Bostock's perspective. Everyone on the brakes there, you could not make this up right now. You would think it was scripted. They all went around the instant, and in the end, we can see everyone squeezed over a little bit of touches there, and unfortunately, that was a bit of a loss for none other than Dave Collier, but everyone got through that absolutely perfectly. 10 out of 10, well done to them all. But of course, it went a little bit wrong for Eddie Fearbold later on the lap, and this is what happened to him, making his way towards McPhillory Park, because he had been involved in the incident earlier on, and he was behind Clayton, lost the rear of the car, twitched one way, then the other out of turn 9, rolled to the inside barrier, and at that point held his brakes, and then thought to himself afterwards, yep, I'm going to need to tow this one as much. I'd love to keep it running. But after that, we did have a bit more difficulty. This was lap number 2 from Ross Wheatley. We believe he was caught up in an incident with Steve Hughes. Now, where was Steve Hughes in all of this is the question. So here's Wheatley going in towards Griffin's Bend, and as he did so, oh, it got wrong in front of him. And, well, that was Paul Matt and Daniel Mello, I believe, getting caught up. So where was Steve Hughes in all of this? Well, can we go back a little bit and find out? I think we might be able to. This was Steve Hughes having it go wrong. So, oh, goodness me, the Subi KSR driver, and there was contact there with Rob Gregg. Well, I don't know what's quite happened to Rob Gregg, but you can see the aftermath there, and Steve Hughes being caught out there by the already damaged car of Gregg trying to carry on. Well, there's a bit of a story between them, I can tell you that. And, well, I don't think we're going to get the full replay of that, unfortunately, but what we did see happen was Paul Mann and Daniel Mellor come together, and this was the pair of them making their way up towards turn number 2. They were just ahead of Ross Wheatley, and into the braking zone they went, the Ellis Racer driver attacking, and, well, it was a mistake there from Matt, and they all just simply broke into each other at that point. It was a reaction, and unfortunately, it was a negative reaction as a result of it. I mean, we also had this for Rachel Hugh on lap number 2. And this was Rachel, having already gone wide there at the chase chicane, rejoined, and then was tapped on the rear. Oh, goodness me. I think there was a bit of an error there from what was the car of James Fraser. Not expecting Rachel Hugh to be going as slowly as she was recovering the car. Fraser probably wasn't aware that Hugh was recovering. And in the end, Hugh pulled in the side. Now, there's no mandatory tow zone there, to be fair. Being that close to the pit lane, I think Hugh just wanted to get out of the way of everyone with a broken steering rack. And, well, in the end, had to creep to the pit lane. But well done to Rachel for doing so, although well done to everyone for taking evasive action as well. Bit of a scary moment there. And then we did have this for Jordan Butler on lap number 3, ladies and gentlemen. And, ooh, that had already gone wrong at turn number 9 before McVillery. And the car still rolling there. And, well, I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen. In the end, he got it stopped. I think the car was rolling enough. He couldn't stop it back going onto the road. And that's when he towed. He got it out the way as safely as he could, and well done to everyone. And then we of course had this for Govind Suresh, and this was a commentator's curse moment. We're saying about the fact that he was making his way forward, and then suddenly, well, he wasn't making his way forward any further when he lost the rear into turn number 3, and it biffed the barrier, and that was his race done and dusted. And we had this for Dave Collier. This will be the last replay we do get before we come back to live racing. We can't be in them for too long. He was fighting side by side here with the SimRacing Team Lowlands car. Tiny touch there by the looks of things, but causing the car to break into pieces, shrapnel all over the place, and Dave Collier's race coming to an abrupt halt just like that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's back to your live racing. As we do come back, well, there's definitely a lot of cloud building over Mount Panorama at the moment, but there's also been clouds of incidents. But we look to the front of the field, and Dean Sheasby still in lead. 15 minutes in, or 60 minutes in, we should say. Liam Fraser, Menno Bloem behind. It's 1-2 right now for Moonshiners Racing Club. And meanwhile, Menno Bloem running in third. And right now, the SimRacing team at Lola's driver staying with them. This is really the inverse of what we saw and none other than Watkins Glen only a week ago, where it was Menno Bloem being chased by Moonshiners Racing Club. He's now chasing the team. But as they hang on through, we also see Denny Ploger. They're talking about one other thing of these incidents, and that's a very good point, which is if you are running a motion rig, which a few of our drivers have the privileged position of doing so, you feel the impact through the rig itself, and that can really shake you about, and that can make you quite nauseous, to be fair. And depending on the severity of the motion and how many planes of travel you have in it, it can also actually cause you a risk of injury as well. Indeed, the simulator rigs, the very best ones out there, of course, really will simulate everything they possibly can. And indeed, ones you can have in your house as well. If you've got the money available, you'd be amazed at what you could have. But good point there, Denny. Thank you for pointing that out. But right now, let's bring you back up to speed with what's happened. So your top three have broken away, with John Treed in fourth place and Connor Peak behind. And Stuart Rice there, your club leader at the moment. We've got Matthew Massey for close company, and Michael Rhodes there with him. Now, Rhodes, of course, did clear Joshua Downing, and in fact, Downing has lost a place to none other than Danny Weir in the process. However, if you're worried that Joshua Downing might be struggling for pace right now, we think that Downing might be doing a lot more fuel saving here at this point, and also some tyre management to make sure he's safe to get to that pit stop when the rain arrives. He might be thinking about, I need to save some extra fuel here, because right now the game plan is not looking good otherwise. It's always a valid tactic, and of course the more fuel saving he does, it shortens his effective pit stop, and it also gives him that longer opening stint. So it's a full process. He's trying to apply here as much as he possibly can. Another change of the foot. Well, we've got some battling going further down the order. Martin Brandon looking to pick off another car. As we ride on board with the Exorcist Simworks driver, looks up the inside there to Griffin's bed. And I think the only thing that's going to stop Martin Brandon is a barrier here today. I'm not saying that's going to happen, I should just point out, because otherwise I'll put the curse on it before it's too long. But right now, looking to attack Krista Petty for 14th place in the club class. We show you your class positions on your screen on the left-hand side there. Show you the top 20 of both classes. But Brandon right now having an absolute wow of a time out there and looking to go on the attack. But further down the order, well, we had a bit of change there. Peter Armstrong making his way on past. Ellen Olsen, the Ghost Squad motorsport driver, making his way onwards. And right now looking to attack Andy Rooney shortly. So Validity V Racing finding they've got a driver who's between the two of them now. And well, Armstrong chasing position with Rooney for 18th place in club. Can he make that happen? We will see. As John Ludbrook, meanwhile, has lost a couple of places as well. I think Ludbrook's dropped down to 35th overall. A Premier driver behind Olsen now. But these drivers carry on fighting everywhere you look at the moment. The fights now becoming a little bit more spread out. They are becoming a little bit more perhaps personal, you could say, in terms of the fact you've got pairs fighting rather than groups. But to be fair, keeps things very exciting when at any moment position could change. Armstrong there going for a bit of a switchback heading in towards Forest Elba, trying to give himself the best possible run. Does perfectly. And we know how quick this Ferrari can be, particularly when it starts getting to the top gears and in a slipstream as well. He's got the double toe here coming down Conrad, but at the same time, Andy Rooney, no slouch there in his McLaren, but here comes Armstrong looking around the outside, and we'll use the draft there of Eduardo Andino, who's trying to get the two of them to fight. Remember, Andino's part of the club class as well. Armstrong looking around the outside, doesn't work, switches to the other outside now, but meanwhile, look at this, from what is Andy Rooney up the inside of Eduardo Andino, and I don't think anybody, I didn't expect it at least, I did not expect Andy Rooney to go from defence to offence there. Lovely pass on Eduardo Andino. I think Andino was so caught out, but in the end, he just simply watched it happen and went, you know what, I never expected it. Fair play, Andy, and Andy up into 17th place. But how about that for an offensive defensive? Oh, sometimes they say the best defense is a good offense. But meanwhile, on the offensive goes Peter Armstrong up the inside of Eduardo Andino, and Andino will fall down to 19th in the club class. But behind, Ellen Olsen still watches on, looking to try and tap onto the back of it as they make the way up the hill, and as they do for the 10th time of asking. And meanwhile, we look a little further behind them to Rachel Hugh, who after coming to the pits for repair work on lap number 2, the Blue Sky Esports driver chased after Mikhail Salkudi. Salkudi, of course, had a long extended time at the start of the race and will try to recover what he can out of this race where possible. But from them, we do look back up the order, and we look in particular to none other than what will be Jack Giles. And Giles hit under a bit of pressure of Mark De Vries. He makes his way up between the Apex and the 18. De Vries gets a really good run there at Forest Elbow. And I think if we look to get overall positions, well, right now this is going to be De Vries moving up into 13th place overall, with Marcus Clayton following. So Clayton is there or thereabouts. right now looking to try and attack Jack Giles. Giles taking a bit of grass there, and it's always scary when you go too wide down Conrod, because that road is wide enough for 3 cars just about. You can squeeze them all together, but in too wide you want to give as much space as you possibly can. Marcus Clayton, meanwhile, he wants to try and tap into this opportunity and try to make the most out of the fact that it does look as though Jack Giles just not looking too settled at the moment. We'll have to wait and see if that's the way it goes in reality, as James Bostock and Michael Lecco are also catching up as well. And right now this field is getting closer and closer together at the bottom end of the top 15. But as these drivers make their way onto the next lap, Joshua Downing, meanwhile, still chasing after Danny Weir, but he's got Barry Wedman for company. Simon Hunt still there as well. Let's not forget about Simon Hunt. He qualified well, starting 5th in the club class. He's exactly there at the moment. Started 14th overall, up to 12th, aided a bit, you could say, by the difficulties of others. But right now, chasing after Joshua Downing, who finds Barry Wenman on his inside. When goes removed, that'll be up into 10th place then. Wenman making another overall spot. And his target's Matthew Massey in the Spectra Racing BMW that's just out of camera shot. And he's just trying to get a bit closer. We had a bit of drama for Max Dean from what I'm hearing in my ears. So unfortunately for Max Dean, the race has got a bit wrong. We're going to replay that when we can. Cut into it back very shortly. And what's happened to Max Dean? Well, it's the final corner. I think he's gone for a spin, and the Gav Max Racing driver has got the car pointed back in the right direction. And was the 292 driver makes his way in towards the opening bend of this lap. Not a happy moment there. Here's a quick replay to explain. So this was Dean coming down at the time, being chased by none other than the 5M Racing 143. Made his way to the corner, hit the apex curb when the rear was already loose, and a bit of a tap there by the car of none other than, I believe, that wasn't Steve Hughes there. I'll just try to see who that was. But anyway, the 5M Racing car making a small touch, but I think they'll get away with it just about, and Dean getting himself racing once again. But with that, as the drivers come on, in terms of that 143 car, just to be clear about who that was, do believe it was your Premier driver of Daniel Miller, who's towards the back of the field. Well, all these drivers push it on as best they can as we're getting closer and closer towards the halfway point. But Andy Rudy right now, after that impressive move earlier on, he has got Peter Armstrong for company. So Armstrong has decided whatever Rudy can do, he can do it too. And as we look back from the rear of Rudy's 202 McLaren, well, there's the very fast charging 245 Ferrari. My good Lord, Armstrong there. There is always the Constantino effect, of course, which makes the closing under braking much more aggressive than it actually is in terms of how it looks. But Armstrong right now, he is looking very rapid over the mountain. Look at the exit there, out of turn number 18. And now in the draft here, well, Rudy is going to be under a lot of pressure. But we saw this a couple of laps ago, and Rudy this time, what does he do to defend? Well, Armstrong now, with an attempt, peels the outside, the Ghost Squadron Ferrari, getting ready to pounce. But of course, you can see that Andy Rudy's car, the McLaren, no slouch when it comes to straight line speed. That Ferrari being held back by its top gear. And on the inside, Armstrong goes too wide into the chase. Too wide they come out, but there's elbows between the two of them, and Rudy being elbowed out there. Not too impressed about it, and well, as the flames spit out the back of that McLaren, he won't be too impressed with the Ferrari. But to be fair, Rudy will cool down and get back on it. I think Armstrong there just carried a bit too much speed in and immediately gives the place back. And to be fair, what I was about to say is that Peter Armstrong, a very respectful driver, and well, when he feels he's wrong, he normally does address positions based on experience of what in other leagues he's raced in. And well, the Fleur TV racing driver Andy Rudy will immediately think, well, you know what, given that, I don't mind it whatsoever. Fair racing, and they carry on. Great respectful racing there between the two of them. But as they make their way up to speed, meanwhile we look to further club drives up the road. Jack Giles and Marcus Clayton together right now. They're battling for 6th place in club and what is 14th overall. But they do have James Bostock and Michael Lecco who want to get involved, and Lecco in particular wanting to try and pick up some club places of his own. Now as they make their way through, ooh, goodness me, to the barrier. The dipper goes James Bostock there. Caught out the corner by left eye, and well, Bostock grazed the barrier there, getting away with it just about, as Simon Hunt, I think, has had an instant of his own at the dipper. Or can we get a replay of that? I think we can very shortly, but not before we do see a potential move from Matthew Massey on Michael Rhodes. Rhodes doesn't really want to let this go if he can help it. I think he wants to use Massey as a spacer versus Barry Wemman and Danny Weir, but I think Massey's going to make this hard here. Rhodes just holding on the road just about, and well, no pun intended there with Surname versus what we're talking about as they make their way down towards turn 23. But Matthew Massey right now fired to the firm defensive wall being set up by Rhodes. The British driver here does not want to let it go versus his fellow countryman, and with Stuart Rice, of course, gaining a little bit of time here to feel safe. But I think Rhodes feels as though he's got Rice right where he wants him if he's going this defensive versus a Premier class driver. Remember, club versus Premier, there's no points for beating another class's driver. You simply need to beat the cars in your own class if you want to gain the maximum points of 100 for the win. But Rhodes, I think, wants to use Massey essentially as a blocking tool to Wemman and particularly Danny Weir and Joshua Downing, and that's why he's holding on right now. But Stuart Rice 2 seconds away. And the more these two fight, the more likely it is that Rice is going to gain a bigger gap. As Bassey there goes very deep at Griffin's Bend, and well, that's going to enable the opportunity for Barry Webman to get closer. But with that, we'll take a look at what exactly happened to Simon Hunt. Now, Hunt at the time was running happily in 5th place in the club class, but as he came out the dip at the rear of the car, let go. He tried to hold it together, did well on the first pass, but in the end it let go on the second time round and rolled across the road. Oh, goodness me for Simon Hunt, and in the end he got it towed. Now, if you're sat there thinking, why could he tow it straight away? Well, let's get you on the board and we'll explain. And I made his way through the corners first. Let's take a look at the incident and just hit the inside wall there. That's what upset the car, and that's what sent it around. But remember, to tow a car in iRacing, it needs to be stationary. At this point, it's not. And then he got slightly pranged by the second car going past, and then could get it towed when the car was fully stationary. So that's why it took so long, and really was at the mercy of time then. It didn't work out. But I believe, whilst that's happened, Connor Pink has had a big brush with the wall somewhere. And well, Connor Pink now has got damage to the left-hand side of the car. Where could that have happened? Because that front left suspension has completely collapsed. That's got to be the inside of Forest Elbow or the dip, or one of the two. But Pink right now is just trying to get home. He can't turn through right-hand corners. He can only do left-handers here. Well, the good news is it's all left-handers into the pit lane, so he will get there. But Connor Pink has survived a huge scare. But can we find out how exactly that has happened to Pink? And, well, if we can, ladies and gentlemen, we will. But right now, just crawl into the pit lane. And it has gone very wrong for Connor Pink, no doubt about it. But the good news is it could have been far, far worse, as we like to say. And not quite that way. But with that, as he carries on, well, meanwhile, we do look back up to Liam Fraser, who has Menno Bloem still with him. Dean Sheasby, 2 seconds away. This is the leading trio, although to be fair, there's Sheasby in the camera now at the bottom, and then there's Fraser, then there's Bloem, and John Treed is only a second behind. Treed is now flying behind them and catching up very quickly indeed. So I think Liam Fraser right now might be the number 2 driver here today for the Moonshiners Racing Club team in terms of trying to make that 1-2 happen. His game plan is to essentially make sure that Sheasby is untouchable and therefore keep Bloem and Treed behind. And the thing is, he's got the right car for it, because this being a circuit where power is king on the run up and down the mountain, the Ford Mustang, few are going to beat it on the straight line, even the very quick BMW, it's inline 6. But as the SimRacing team Lowlands driver makes his way through the corners right now, the 152 driver absolutely working this hard, no doubt about it. See, there's so many stories out there at the moment. Paul Mayer as well, attacking Gianluca Rospo. Rospo and Mayer both moving up. Rospo started 20th in Premier, we should point out. He's up into 13th. And Paul Mayer up into 14th, having started in 18th place. And both drivers having very respectable races right now as we show you the class standings. And as they make the way on around, they've got a nice comfort gap of 26 seconds to Ellen Olsen, who's got growing company Steve Hughes. But meanwhile, Paul Mayer there and Gianluca Rospo swap places. And Mayer up the inside, going through Quarry Corner. And in the end, Rospo going a bit deep, coming out to the cutting. But now going on the attack as we ride aboard with the Italian Stallion as he heads in towards McPhilly Park. But is this place over? He takes a bit of a tighter line there. That's to offset the dirty air. Ooh, goodness me. Careful, Paul. You don't want to be making a mistake like that, because he went very high the exit curve there. And will these cars run very low as Rospo hits the inside barrier? And as he does so there before the dipper, that's curbed his momentum. Has that damaged the suspension? Not quite, but that's definitely going to have impacted the front bumper on that right side. I wouldn't be surprised if a bit of bodywork now is rubbing against the tyre, brushes the wall there. I think he's got damage to the steering rack, because he does not look to be able to take those corners anywhere near as cupped as before. And if it's right inside damage, it means in the left-handers you will see him have extra understeer than normal. The car will need more steering input just to get it to turn the same radial direction. As he makes one down, Rospo working hard and will now make his way through those corners. And well, right now, Paul Mayer will be happy he's got clear, but Rospo will see if he can come back. We're at the halfway point, remember. A lot of cloud has come over the circuit. That's where you're really seeing it. It's getting cloudy at the back of the camera shots every time. Keep in mind, of course, Skyline. The reason it's called Skyline, the very highest point of the circuit, is the fact that when it is sunrise, with the 12 hours of Bathurst typically starting in the early hours of the morning and the sun rises, well, Skyline, you look directly into the sunrise when it comes up. Well, of course, the sun will be setting here today, so we have got sunset conditions. We are expecting some rain in around about 5 to 10 minutes time, and that rain is what everybody's waiting for. Although Martin Brandon into the pit lane here, we have got a wet weather car out there, the former Simon Hunt, although he's in the pit lane actually at the moment. And we'll keep an eye on the tyre compound that drivers are opted to run. We'll show you that on the tyre on the left-hand side of your screen. If they've got a white circle D, that means on the dry tyre or the slick. And if it's a blue circle W, and there, as soon as I say the rain's due to come, it actually comes a little bit early. The rain comes literally down on the halfway mark of the race. Well, earlier rain, and right now, well, this is going to catch a few drivers out here. Who will we see coming to the pits first? Now, remember, just because rain is falling does not mean you need to go to the wet tyre straight away. If you can keep your tyre temperature and the rain is not falling at too aggressive a rate, you can do a couple of laps, depending on the length of the circuit and your confidence levels. You can do those laps with this tyre, but this is important because this is the club leader. Stuart Rice has been caught by Rhodes. Massey and Webman are right behind. So is Danny Weir. Suddenly, the club leader is not looking safe here for Rice as he makes his way down. And well, here comes Rhodes looking for the lead, going in towards the chase. They go through the kick, and Rhodes takes the lead for now, but onto the brakes they go. Matthew Massey and Barry Webber closed up behind. John Trees into the pit lane. That will be to go to the wet tyre straight away. Will we see anybody in this quintet dive into the pit lane? And the answer is going to be Massey's in. The other four stay out because it's not rain falling everywhere at the moment. It's only over the mountain. Although, to be fair, saying that in a sentence, that should be enough to scare a driver, to be fair. If the rain's falling on the mountain and only starting to creep over the other side of the circuit, but hold up, the Dexter's Motorsports pair here. It's the DXT Civil War at this point. Well, that's going to be Barry Webman up the inside of Danny Weir. They let it go in the end. Magenta surpasses Cyan as they head onwards. But as Rider Esports says, this is about to become the best Bathurst race ever. Well, this is going to get very scary at this point, no doubt about it. And well, as next, what is NXG Nauta does say there, both Rado drivers putting in some brilliant lap times. This rain is really going to make or break the drivers. You've taken the words directly out of the mouth, good sir, on Madam, because right now this is going to become a race of survival. Treed is into the pit, and we should point out he has gone to the wet, so has Massey. A number of drivers are coming in early. Brandon, Rudy, Ludbrook further down the order. They're all gambling going to the wet tyre straight away for safety. But remember, when they come out, this circuit will be hot to the wet tyre, so therefore they'll have to protect that tyre for a couple of laps until the circuit gets wet enough to really make the most of the wet tyre. At that point, it's a race of survival. As Ashley Shucksmith, we're going on quite slowly there, coming from Griffiths in towards the cut-in. Has he got a problem here? Is he not feeling comfortable? As Connor Pink and Ross Wheatley both go a bit deep there. Well, they try to get it together. Meanwhile, well, Michael Rhodes has already dispatched Stuart Rice, and well, Barry Webber's got cleared. Stuart Rice having to fight here as much as possible. We've had an incident for Ross Gillett, as we've also had an incident for Paul Mayer. And meanwhile, Danny Weir right behind Rice. Rice trying to hold on here, but this circuit is getting wetter and wetter. And well, on these cameras, you're not really seeing any wet lines form at the moment, but the drivers will see them with those headlights on. These are the conditions now where if you find a patch of water that started to flow a little bit, the slick tyre has a risk of aquaplane. Look at how they're crawling through what is Forest Elbow. That shows you water starting to build, although it's not visible on the cameras, and everyone is just trying to survive at this point. Sheasby, Fraser, as in Liam Fraser, and Menno Bloem all into the pit lane from the lead of this race. We've had a total pits of Max Dean. We were off camera. Howarth, Olsen, Hughes, Florian, they're all in. Fraser is in, James Fraser and Greg further down. Everyone's coming in at the moment. And coming in for a move here, Danny Weir on the inside of Stuart Rice. In towards the kick before the chase. He gets it done. Mark DeVries goes up the inside. As they come up through the corner, well, DeVries doesn't get that done in the end. Stuart Rice beating on the brakes. And well, will these drivers all flick to the pit lane here? Surely they've got to at this point. Staying out at this point would be hazardous. And as they make the way down, they all do. And Stuart Rice taking his time to the pit lane here. Joshua Downing catches back up. Jack Giles as well as catching up here. This is going to be a race that's completely turned on its head. Now, as we do see Dean Sheasby's cars going to the wets, they're all going to the wet tyre surely at this point. And we'll have to wait and see what goes on as Ross Wheatley will be coming in. And well, the driver everyone will be looking at is this man, as Wheatley's missing his front bumper. I don't know where that's gone. Answer the postcard, ladies and gentlemen. But John Treed heads on around, having gone to the wet tyre. And meanwhile, Menno Bloem heads out the pit lane. So Treed, in fact, has lost out significantly going to the wet tyre as early as he has, because Menno Bloem takes the lead of the race. So Bloem is now your leader ahead of Liam Fraser. Dean Sheasby has just finished being serviced. He spent an extra 5 seconds in the pit. That'll be for taking on extra fuel here. And meanwhile, where is Treed? Here he is making his way through turn 1. But Treed right now seems to be struggling a little bit on that wet tyre, even though he always twitching all over the place as the car. And well, a bit of a difficult moment there. And we've got Michael Lecco in the pit lane. They're all into the pits right now. It is pit stop season, but surely that will be, we'll leave the pits there. Michael Rhodes coming out. That was a driver who's a lap down leaving the pit lane, Eduardo Andino. But Rhodes comes back out in the lead of the club class. He's up into 5th place now as a result. This Rhodes has really nailed this strategy to the post. Meanwhile, coming out the pits, there's Barry Wemman, Matthew Bassey a bit further behind. And all these drivers making their way onwards will also come out the pit lane there. The Lamborghini that's lapped down, and Gavin Corby Corby, the other member of the Gavax Racing team. We haven't quite said hello or really talked about it today. Good to see him out there to the 204 driver. And we're right now a bit frustrated race, 17th in club at the moment, but there's still places to be gained. And we'll come to shortly why now this is anybody's race, because they're on the wet tyre, but understandably there's just a big question mark about being on the wet tyre at this point in the distance. But oh, who's that who's gone round to the rear of the picture? Is that Massey? I think it is Matthew Massey who's had a big spin there at what is turn number 2, and we'll try and get the camera to him when we can, but Massey has got it around. And he's towed to the pit lane immediately, and that's the point we were about to say, or we were going to come on to, is the fact these wet tyres, yes, they're the optimum tyre for the conditions, but, and there's a big caveat here, racing in the wet at Bathurst is not easy. Gianluca Rospo almost biffs the pedigree barrier there on turn number 2. Just about keeps it away from the wall. James Bostock takes 8th place in Premier off of him. This is now a circuit where you've got to find where the wet line is and get away from the aquaplated line wherever possible. It's about avoiding any standing water, and water flows over this mountain very quickly. So suddenly, what is looking to be a dry line on one lap can suddenly become the worst possible line on the next lap. As we see our drivers making their way through, and well, right now, Liam Fraser's got ahead of Menno Bloem. That's a change for the lead. And well, a big change between these two right now as they make their way down to that braking zone. Menno Bloem there with him, but Fraser taking over at the front, but he goes a bit deep there. Menno Bloem gets a smoother line as they come out of Murray's corner and head on towards Hill corner once again. Meanwhile, Stuart Rice forward in behind Mark De Vries, and well, Rice taking it easy here. Danny Weir just up the road, finding pressure from Barry Wenman as Dean Sheasby is back into the pit lane. I don't believe it as I look at my content booth window. What has happened to Sheasby? I haven't seen a black flag or anything, unless he's picked up a penalty and we haven't been notified about it. But Sheasby is back in. He went to the wet tyres as well. Well, Sheasby just having to do a drive-through here because he's had plenty of fuel. It's got to be, surely, it's got to be for speed into the pit lane or a bad pit exit from the previous stop. Either way. Oh, what's happened there? Let's go with Suresh. Contact with the Lamborghini, and Suresh's car rolls across the road for Chats Motorsport. He tries to get out of the way, but a car that's definitely struggling for pace there. As Joshua Downey and Jack Giles come out of the chase as well. And right now fighting over 6th place here in club. But as they do, well, right now Joshua Downey's lost out massively in the pit stop. Drops all the way from the top 4 to 7th place in club. But again, as they make the way around, there's Jack Giles with a big slide there. They can't wash it out. Out to the final corner. Downey's going to go around the outside as Michael Lecco back into the pit lane there, taking a second stop. What's happened there? The only other thing I can think about, as we do see Joshua Downey getting that move done, very smooth work there from Downey, no doubt about it. And that is the car going very slow. That's Martin Brandon with a broken car trying to make his way onwards, I believe. Oh, another number there to Martin Brandon. That's going to be towed to the pit lane quite quickly. And also, we've had an incident for what is Yelmer Bergsma. Well, the only thing I can think of with Sheasby is, has he come back into the pit lane to make a tweak to the car? He did spend 8 seconds in the pit. I think I know what Sheasby's had to do. I think they've changed the anti-roll bar on the rear wing on that Ferrari. Now, keep in mind, in pit stops, you can, in GT3, change the roll bars. I thought Sheasby there was going to the wall. We weren't going to see him again. I think he did go wide there at turn number 6 and in towards turn number 7. And that's why my voice went into slow motion from refund. But you can change the anti-roll bar settings and the rear wing angle on these cars in the pits, but it costs an extra 10 seconds in the pit lane to do so. I think Sheasby, given the conditions, has thought, you know what, we need to change the settings of the car, otherwise this car is not stable enough to make it to the end. Right now, everybody tried to stay alive, but look at that wet line there on the outside of what would normally be the racing line at Philly Park. Suddenly, that is just a massive puddle of water there. This rain has really come down, and right now, well, all the drivers are definitely going to be struggling at this point to learn where exactly to go, where not to go. But there's been some big change of the foot. Marcus Clayton, by the way, now up into 4th place in club as a result of his pit stop. He's done a lot of fuel saving, and the Rhino Esport driver jumping ahead. But Joshua Downey is hot on his heels and is looking to get on the attack as well. So this could get very tense between them. We have had a few more drivers towed to the pit, like Barry Wenman being one of them. Actually, Shucksmith's been involved in an instant. Simon Hunt is carried on out there after his big shunt just before the wet weather really arrived. But Downey right now getting ready to go on the attack here as we ride aboard with the Type 2 Racing 267. And as he makes his way on down here in the draft, well, right now he's going to look to the outside here. I don't think Clayton's going to make this anywhere near easy for him, but all Clayton's got to do is really sit in the middle of the road at this point and just not put a foot wrong. Well, it carries a bit too much speed there, but Clayton then keeps on the road just about. But Joshua Downey right now falls back. They're trying to understand where the water is. It's only getting a wetter and wetter circuit as they make the way out of the chase and down towards Murray's Bend. As I go in towards that brain zone, well, we do say hello to All About the Gyro, Dwayne Hoffman, of course, giving us the update from the garage of Full TV Racing, a sister team to Full Virtual Tilt Motorsports. And as he tries to make the way through, Full Tilt Virtual Motorsport, let's get that in the right order there. And the words came out before my brain could process them, but Josh down it right now, trying to process his way past Marcus Clayton. Looks the inside into turn one, goes for a big lunge under braking here. And Joshua Downing, well, he's found his braking markers. Downing is looking a threat here in the wet weather conditions, and Marcus Clayton right now try and come back. Next target, Stuart Rice, 2.5 seconds up the road. Now, as we look to Daddy Weir, being passed there by Mark DeVries going around the outside. Another thing to consider with regards to the way our drivers are running this race, who had what set up on the car when we went to the grid at the start? And you perhaps sat there thinking right now, well, of course, they all had race setups on, where you can set a car up for racing here at Bathurst. And typically to do so, you have a car which is very twitchy on the rear end to give you rotation over the mountain, but also one that's very quick on the straights. A wet weather setup at any circuit, especially at Bathurst, you're going to put a huge amount of rear wing on the car, as that's Downing rolling backwards and rolling out the way. There's everyone has to snap on the brakes, and Downing in the end, the car rolling around. I can imagine he probably couldn't get it stopped because of the wet weather, so he can carry on there. He doesn't have to tow because he was able to get going very quickly. But my good lord, the Type 2 racing driver coming across the road there, and in the end, like a pendulum swinging one way to the other, and he slips down to 5th place in club with actually Shucksmith 2 seconds behind him. Shucksmith's race has gone from bad to disaster to good to getting even quicker. And Shucksmith right now has gone from 10th in club to 6th, as that's down into the barrier there. Downey's out of this race. He's had something go wrong there before, but Philamy, and his race is over to the pit lane for now. Well, he's definitely towed, but he may get back out a bit later on as Stuart Rice carries on. But goodness me, it's all playing out, and well, we've had the feed there from All About the Gyro in the YouTube chat for the pit lane with regards to Ellen Olsen. And Olsen right now doing a fantastic job. And let's show you some class paces. Olsen, remember, she started 26th in Premier. She's now 8th in Premier class. Olsen's come through the field, and the Full TV Racing driver is just not putting a foot wrong. And Gianluca Rospo has had an instant. He was inside the top 5, I believe, in Premier, and he's now had to tow to the pit lane. More drives towing. We've got a black flag for Barry Wenman. That will be for instant points. Black flag for Liam Fraser as well. We've got a meatball flag for Paul Mayer in the Premier class. It's all go wrong for many, but right now, Ellen Olsen, all she's got to do is survive in this race, and she's on course for her best result of the season so far, and a huge haul of points. And that's what you've got to do in these conditions. Survive first and foremost, worry about pace later. If you make it to the checker flag, you are going to score some big points here either way. And right now, as the rain does seem to have stopped on our cameras, well, that rain, as quick as it's come, it has stopped, but it's not going to go away in terms of being on the track surface. And also they're showing there's still quite a lot of water on the inside of Forest Elbow, and the car understeering away. But as all these drivers right now make it on the mission, well, we do look to none other than what is the car of Mikel Salcudi, who is pushing his way onwards, coming all the way from the back of the field after the open lap instance. And the Verado Esport driver up in the 12th in club already, and really working hard at the moment. He's gone to the wet tyres. We've had the feed there from Verado Esport in the garage to say that Salcudi gained 5 places as a result of the transition to the wet tyres. His next target, 13 seconds up the road, is Jack Giles. What can he do here? Can he get inside the top 10? Can he somehow find a way into the top 5? There's a huge gap between him and a few of his rivals, because after Giles, it's a 2-second gap to Fraser, as in James Fraser. Then it's 11.5 seconds to Christopher Petty. Then it's 40 seconds to Andy Chell. Speaking of which, here is Chell. We haven't talked about him all day today. It was more about Simon Hunt, but right now he's Quack Motorsports hope of finish inside the top 10, and coincidentally there is Simon Hunt in the rear of your picture. But right now Chell on the lead lap and keeping it together for Quack Motorsport. And well, he normally thrives in these changeable conditions. He's one of those drivers who's not quick in the dry, but he's very sensible in the wet, and sensibility in the wet is much more valuable than pace typically. As he makes his way through the corner, we've got a few replays to bring you as well, ladies and gents, with regards to some big moments that have happened. And well, as we look to Liam Fraser, making his way in towards turn number 1, he's bridging a big gap to Menno Bloem. In fact, where is Menno Bloem? He is 12 seconds behind. Well, Bloem's got to have a mistake somewhere. In fact, he has. And here's a quick replay to explain what happened to Menno Bloem. So this was Bloem at chase at the time when the rain was falling on lap number 19. So it was only a lap and a half ago. Chased after Liam Fraser and lost the rear there, going in towards the cutting. It slid, and he was able to get it going there. He had space to turn it, and we'll also keep in mind there, the reason he hasn't towed is because there's no cars around him. That is the exception to the rule, one of which is that if there's no cars around you and you can get the car recovered at your own risk, you are allowed to keep going. The only thing is, if a car did then hit into him, Menno Bloem would be subject to a huge licence point penalty on his SimRacing International racer licence. So Bloem there takes the risk. It does work out for him, but that big slide there, he's not out of this yet. But keep in mind the fact that right now this is becoming a round that's proving incredibly challenging for him. But meanwhile, as we do look to some of the other big moments, well, of course, we had this huge jump for Barry Wenman a lap before that. And this was Wenman making his way out of the dipper and in towards Forest Elbow. And so it tells me, oh, it snakes already. Does he get it stopped? He does, but unfortunately the rear of the car comes around on him. He briefly touches the barrier, but immediately toes there, knowing there's nowhere to go, and he is not getting that turned around. So Wenman toes, and we had this for Ashley Shucksmith. And Shucksmith in the end, making his way over Skyline, and the McDonald's privateer machine coming in towards the dipper. And as he did so here, well, unfortunately, unlike chicken dippers for McDonald's, that was not well cooked. And, well, in the end, going to the barrier there. And I don't think he's going to be loving it as much, but he does get away with that. He does brush the barrier more than whack the barrier. And, well, not very technical terms that, I'll admit, but the understanding is that Ashley Shucksmith's still surviving. And, well, running in 5th place in the club class currently as a result of surviving that scary moment. With that, we come back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, this race right now, absolutely poised here to be all about surviving as best as you possibly can. Mistakes could happen at any moment, and when they do, we can suddenly see a driver who's a long way up the field, suddenly brought into the clutches of the rest of the field, and vice versa. Speaking of which, Gianluca Rospo, well, he was a driver who was doing exceptionally well, got into the top 5, and then it all fell apart. But what exactly happened to Rospo in order to see him fall down the order? And the answer to that question is we can actually get a replay of this. This was on lap number 19. So this was Rospo coming down in towards the dipper, and I think to Ashley Shucksmith here, albeit Rospo would claim it, given he was the one who did it first. In fact, no, he got smooth through the corner, but the rear let go on the exit, and when in the end, whacked to the back of the car for the barrier, couldn't get it turned around, and that's when he towed to the pit lane there, knowing it was pointed in the wrong direction. But as we come back, well, Gianluca Rospo has carried on despite towing to the pit lane, so he's not giving up. Nobody's giving up, to be fair. And that's when you see the spirit of these drivers. That is what's going to push them forward. But the rain has come back in full force now. And, well, with that rain falling a little bit more aggressively at this point, there was a brief lull in the rain. And now the rain is back here. And I think it's here to stay. And, well, I can see a lot of umbrellas going up in what is the stands, opposite my commentary booth window on the start-finish straight. And right now, these drivers have all got to try and survive it for a bit longer. Ellen Olsen running 7th in the Premier Class and 15th overall, does have James Howarth closing in on her, and he is closing at a rapid rate of knots. And, well, I think Howarth right now definitely feeling a lot more comfortable in that Ford Mustang, but no, he's not where he wants to be, given where he started this race and the early incident that's put him down the order. And, well, if I was Ellen Olsen, I'd probably be thinking to myself, you know what, just try to hold your ground where you can, and if you're going to let him go on the straight. Let him do the hard work through the corners. If he thinks he can do it sooner, there's no need to worry about fighting here. And for Olsen, this could be a maiden top 10 of the season. Remember, this is her debut season as well. So right now, fresh face to the grid, and we'll try to keep James Howarth at bay. But she can get a good run out of the corners. There's no reason why that Porsche 992 cannot be quick. She is in the right car for wet weather conditions. The engine mounted over the rear axle, rear engine, rear wheel drive. That means the Porsche, statistically, or the theory would state, it is the grippiest car in the wet because you're pushing all the weight onto those rear wheels. You are keeping that car pinned to the ground as best as possible with the amount of drive. And understanding quite a lot of rear wing will be on that car as well. But we have been hearing from about the gyro in the pit lane that Eleanor's radio had to say it's so wet, having to keep the wheel spin down. So therefore, I would imagine that the traction control settings will have been increased. They'll probably be up to maximum now as the car snakes under braking. But Olsen there in towards turn number 23. But right on the Validity V Racing Drive, keeping it together. And Howarth not able to get close enough here. And, well, I think Olsen doing a good job. She's just got to keep her mental state at a place where she's got to think to herself, I've got this, and just keep driving it smart. Let Howarth do the hard work, because as the late great Murray Walker once said, it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass, and here in the wet, it certainly is another thing to pass. I can tell you that. But meanwhile, as we do look for them to Dean Sheasby, well, he's got Michael Lecco for company at Sheasby right now, and try to keep things on the march. He's currently in 11th place overall, 6th in the Premier Class. As we do see a car step at the side there, that is the lap down car, I believe, Eduardo Andino. And we've got some black flags coming in, one for Ross Wheatley and one for Simon Hunt, both for instant points. So both reached the limit there for what will be a drive-through penalty. So that'll be the 16 instant points. And well, hopefully we don't see anybody get to 26 today, because we don't want to see a disqualification if we can help it. But we have lost a few drives in this race, and well, hopefully we don't lose too many more, because at the end of the day, we'll see the ball get to the end if possible. And well, the first driver in the order, working away from those who have retired from the race the latest, James Bostock, Max Dean, Yelmer Bergsma, also Peter Armstrong, Daniel Miller, Connor Pig, Matthew Massey. We've also lost out there, of course, Martin Brandon, Rob Gregg, Andy Rooney, Steve Hughes, Rob Mackay, Govind Suresh, John Ludbrook, Jordan Butler, and Eddie Theobald. So 49 starters. We currently have 33 classified runners, although there is a question mark about Joshua Downing and whether we will see him get back out there, given he has been in the pit lane now for the best part of 9 minutes. The team are working furiously on the car, but I get the feeling right now with the state of the car, it may be a write-off today. But Stuart Rice, we come back to him. Third of your club class drivers of Blue Sky Esports. The man who, of course, took second place in qualifying. Well, right now, definitely trying to make his place count when it comes to this running order. And when Mikhail Salkudi trying to make his way through further down the order, a long way out of the picture here. But you see behind Rice, there's Shucksmith and Clayton, and both of them, Clayton and Shucksmith, I would have put a theory out there, which is they started this race on wet weather setups, because their pace at this point of the race is significantly quicker than Rice's pace. I think Rice is on a dry setup that has been modified to be adaptable to wet conditions, but it's never quite the same, particularly when it comes to things such as the roll bar settings, the suspension settings, and of course that rear wing. And well, Clayton and Shucksmith here looking a lot more comfortable in their cars and looking to try and attack where possible. Dean Sheasby and Michael Lecker, they swap places. Sheasby gives up the place there to the Earth Racing driver. That tells you everything you need to know right now about how Sheasby's feeding out there. He wouldn't normally be giving up an overall position to another class's driver unless he felt he could not go faster at this point of the race. So Sheasby at the moment, I think, on the back foot a little bit and just thinking about making it to the finish wherever possible. And as the drivers all come around, we also do say hello there to Patrick for JT8951, who was saying about being unlucky for Simon Hunt. And well, indeed, it was some great race in the past for Simon Hunt. Not a happy day today for him. And do apologise for missing you earlier on, Patrick. But as James Howarth looks to move on at Olsen, he's got close this time. But as they snake their way in towards turn number 2, Olsen in the end having to work just that little bit harder. Howarth gets close, but on that inside line. The thing about that Ford Mustang is it used to be the king in the wet in GT3, and then in a recent balance performance update, it's seen its wet weather performance really heavily neutered. And well, the car has been restored to a bit of former glory, particularly in drier conditions. But in the wet now, the Ford Mustang, a decent car in the wet, but by no means as quick as it used to be. It used to be an absolute monster at certain circuits in the wet, particularly for some reason the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. Right now, the Dexter Motorsport Scion driver James Howarth, as much as he can get close, the problem is he's got to try and stop the heaviest GT3 out there, and it's not easy to stop what is essentially an American naval vessel. But as we come back to Rice versus Shucksmith, from one American car to another, well, right now the poise of the Corvette being tested here by the elegance of the McLaren, and actually Shucksmith on the inside just gradually outrunning Rice little by little as they get ready to go in towards the chase. Too wide on entry, and will Rice backs off slightly there, lets it go. Shucksmith does get ahead, and well, that spray is getting absolutely obscene off the back of the cars right now, as Stuart Rice the end cannot find a way to battle this back, and Ashley Shucksmith moves up in a third. A lovely move from Shucksmith, another place gained, and well, still more to come, no doubt about it, as they make their way onwards. But Shucksmith at this time, I think, feeling a lot of confidence in himself, and that confidence being very well placed. But the problem now he's got, with 7 minutes to go, he's got to try and bring down a 17-second gap to Danny Weir, and then it's going to be a further 30 seconds to Michael Rhodes, who right now is in a postcode of his own in the club class. But as we look to James Howarth there, tries to go around the outside of Ross Gillott, and as he does so, well, that was a bit of rallycross there, but I think Howarth did get it done in the end, being a bit inventive. I wonder if that does constitute an overtake off the road, to be fair, given the conditions. But right now, Ross Gillott letting it go. The 8th place runner in the club class, and to be fair to Ross, he's sticking in it to win it, keeping it together right now. Howarth has found his way past Olsen in the proceedings as Gillott goes very deep there in towards Murray's Bend, and we'll let Olsen go. He has got a 20-second gap to Krista Petty, and whilst he may have 30 seconds to Andy Chell, I think the full process here for the Welshman is just get to the end. You are almost there, and I'll tell you one thing, I'm not allowed to have favourites in the commentary booth, but I think we can all agree right now, given the fact that his internet connection has been so unstable, well, the fact that it's been so stable so far, we just want to see this man get to the end and get those points to the board. And I think that is going to not quite reduce him to tears, but I think he's going to be jumping up and down in joy when he sees that finish line. But as he makes way onwards, well, ladies and gentlemen, still plenty of drivers out there surviving. Ben Wade as well. Of course, the BMW driver for 5M Racing had a nightmare start to the day, but since then, he's got it back together, running 24th overall, 13th in club class right now, and we have a black flag for James Fraser, so that's going to be a drive-through penalty there for instant points, and Fraser is into the pit lane. Now, as he makes his way on in, it's got to be cautious. There'll be a lot of standing water down the pit lane compared to on the racing service, because, of course, barely anybody uses the pit lane, so they won't be displacing the water anywhere near as quickly. And Fraser makes his way onwards, and then Mikhail Salkudi takes another place back. What about Wayne? Will he find a way through? I don't think so. I think he's too far back, and therefore Ben Wayne will be made to stay in 13th place in club. James Fraser, meanwhile, will come back out in 12th. But whilst they sort that out, well, meanwhile, Dave Collier makes his way on through, and the DC Motorsport driver right now, well, it's definitely been a rough race for him, but to be fair, all things considered, I think if you said to him after the incident he had earlier on, would you finish 10th place today, I think he'd bite your arm off with that one, ladies and gentlemen, because the Irishman right now, he's got his head down and he's pushing on and just trying to see the finish. Indeed, all the drivers are doing so, and well done to all for their absolute determination right now. And well, meanwhile, Dean Sheasby's picked up a yellow flag for track limits. Something tells me that's going to be at the chase chicane there, where he's had a bit of an experimental line. And well, I think the Ferrari for Moonshiners Club Rebels is just not comfortable with these conditions. He's trying to get the most out of a car that definitely seems to be set up more for the dry than the wet today. And what was an opportunity to take his maiden win has definitely slipped away. But Liam Fraser, your leader overall, the Moonshiners Racing Club bootleggers car, as he makes his way in towards the chase once again, 5 seconds ahead of Menno Bloem. But the gap has been coming down at a rate of a second a lap. We're on lap 25. 4 minutes to go as we see Ross Gillett there stepping aside for your race leader, respecting the blue flags as best as possible. Well, we have got Fraser with 2 more laps to go here at Bathurst, we believe. On that basis, he can afford to lose a second a lap. If he loses 2 seconds a lap, that will be worried. It would mean that Menno Bloem will be with him right at the end of the race. And Bloem right now, well, Fraser, 2:26.142. Bloem, meanwhile, a 2-minute 25.401. That is 7 tenths gained. It's not enough. Bloem needs a lot more than that. Fraser is looking safe, so long as he doesn't make a mistake. Marcus Clayton, meanwhile, still trying to attack Stuart Rice. This will be for 4th place after Chuck Smith found his way past Rice earlier on. We jump aboard here with Marcus Clayton. Not quite on course of the podium here in Club, but he's getting closer to it. Well, actually, Chuck Smith is 6 seconds up the road. He is running away from the pair, as right now Rice taking a very wide line there in towards McPhilly Park. Clayton, meanwhile, taking a very tight line. I think right now Clayton trying to see where the wet line is, and the spray that's coming off of the car in front of him is not helping the American driver as he tries to chase down the Briton. But going down through the right into left dipper here, just taking it nice and gently through here. And I think Clayton, in respect to the fact that given where he started, where he fell down to and how far he's recovered, that right now, as much as he would love that 4th place in class off of Rice, is it worth it? Well, it's going to come to him. No, not quite, as Rice goes sideways there, but catches it on the traction control. And Clayton, in the end, he wanted to cut to the inside, but Rice got it stopped. And in the end, Clayton had to back off there. And I think Marcus Clayton and the Verado Esports team, they went from absolutely being ready to jump up and down in joy to almost having their hands over their mouths in fear to suddenly, okay, we're back racing once again. But both of them doing a very good job of keeping that away from each other and away from the barrier. But as he comes in towards the chase, you can't see the corner whatsoever there in the spray for Clayton. He has to back off entirely. That's muscle memory at that point. That's all that's carrying you to the corner. Not any eyesight knowledge. You'll literally have to drive that corner blind. Well, Clayton staying close enough there, but look behind and you can see that is the car of none other than what will be, I believe it's the Ferrari there of Hussein Sarkadesla trying to come on through as well. But as these drivers definitely pushing onwards, well, right now, more to come, no doubt about it. 2 minutes left on the clock here. And Marcus Clayton right now attacking Stuart Rice as much as he possibly can. Looks up the inside here. And Rice goes to turn in. Doesn't turn it in. Clayton lunged it. He's really trying to put the pressure on here is Clayton. And Rice responds to it there, being considerate. And well, I think Clayton right now, he's going to go for a lunge. He wants to get this done. But how long will it be before he really has to sink his teeth into it? We are on to what is the final lap shortly, because here is your race leader, Liam Fraser. He goes on to a 27th and final tour of the circuit. Loses another second or so to Menno Bloem, but right now, 3.6 seconds. That is safe. 2-minute 25.2 to Fraser. Bloem, a 2-minute 24.28. So there's the delta. 9 and a bit tenths gained. Bloem right now, however, does not have enough time in this race if he wants to get this done. We'll have to see what the game plan is going to be as these drivers continue to push themselves onwards. But as they do right now, well, Mikhail Salkudi off camera, of course, up into 10th place for Verado in the club class. But overall top 10 right now completed by Marcus Clayton, the other driver of the team. Further down the order, Gianluca Rosberg coming through. Who's that part of? That's Dave Collier. And Collier's got around. He is outside the tow zone, so he is allowed to turn that car around. But how does he turn it around here? Trying to turn it around uphill in the wrong direction. Your guess is as good as mine, ladies and gentlemen. Hussein Sarkadesla, he's had it go around there coming before McPhilly Park, and well, gets it going. Ross Gillett as well has had a bit of a moment, and well, It's all going wrong for so many drivers right now. Gillett as well, trying to get it to the end. Where is he? He's down to life. Oh, he's parked up there on the apex of turn number 2. He's going to have to tow there. He's going to go back down. It's Ross Gillett, and well, that has gone completely wrong. But meanwhile, Menno Bloem carries on, and Gillett so close to the end of the race. But he's going to be set back there. I'll have to wait and see where he finishes as classified. But 10 seconds left on the clock here. And, well, the white flag is waving for everybody now who's on the lead lap. And, well, Liam Fraser right now only what is the best part of a mile and a half away for his first win of the season. He's just got to keep it away from the barriers, and if he does so, well, this is going to be a very special victory, that Ford Mustang. But Menno Bloem right now 2.2 seconds away. Bloem is definitely in the quicker car in that BMW, but now at this point it's 2 power zones and a heavy braking zone. Surely at this point Fraser doesn't need to do anything magical now. All he's got to do is keep this car on the black stuff as he powers his way and down the final stretch. Club lead, it's Michael Rhodes, and right now he's looking very safe for that 4th overall, but we're going to stay transfixed here to the lead as they make the way in towards the chase chicane. Both there in the middle of the road, trying to find the driest possible line there for their wet tyres to get the best possible grip as they make the way out to the final couple of corners. Menno Bloem has put a huge effort from 6th to 2nd, but meanwhile for Liam Fraser, it started 4th today, but the MRC bootleggers drive picked things up when the wet weather fell, and after coming out to the lead of the pits, he hasn't looked back. Liam Fraser takes victory in Premier and overall ahead of Menno Bloem here at Bathurst, and then it will be, for the 2 seconds between them, the best part of 40 seconds till we get to this man, John Treed. And Treed right now for Access Sinsport with Sim Coach. He started 5th today, but right at the start of the race, he was pushing absolutely hard. We'll come back to it shortly as Ellen Olsen does survive to 8th place in Premier and 15th overall. Well done to Ellen for that, with Krista Petty behind taking 8th in the club class. But as John Treed sees the last couple of corners, the man who started 5th, fought hard from the start and has proven to be just as capable in the wet as in the dry. Well, he may have missed round number 1, but he starts off here by making a good impression. It's John Treed who comes home in 3rd place, and well, what a drive for him. Premier and overall that is for Access Sinsport with Sim Coach. Michael Rhodes, meanwhile, he'll come through shortly, and as he does so, and the Darkwing Racing driver, well, in the dry, he was looking quick, but when the wet weather arrived, he suddenly picked up the pace of the Darkwing Racing 206. Watkins Glen was a reset. Here today, it's an upset for everybody else because Michael Rose takes 4th overall and the club win by a staggering margin. Mark de Vries will come through in gradual time. Finishing off camera, we've got Krista Petty through, as we mentioned earlier on. Mikhail Salkuni, by the way, has come home in 10th place in club. Good recovery drive from him just by Jack Giles. More drives coming through, including Peter Florian there. But let's come back to de Vries. He sees the last couple of corners. And as we'll see here for the SimRacing Team Lowlands driver, well, he started off strong, but it went a bit backwards as the race went on. But he'll still take a top 5 overall. And a 4th place in the Premier class. So some good points coming the way of the Dutchman. He'll still be smiling. And 4 seconds behind him, it's Danny Weir, runner-up in the club class today. And what a drive through the field for the Dexterous Motorsport Cyan driver. Absolutely flying over the course of the race. Robin Aston there in 7th place. And he'll take 5th in Premier ahead of Ashley Shucksmith, who takes his first podium of the season in club. And the prior to the McDonald's machine, he'll be absolutely jumping up and down in joy for that. For Stuart Rice, well, it was looking to be a chance of the win today, but in the end, he'll hold on to 4th in the club class, just ahead of Marcus Clayton, the brilliant duel to the finish line. The Rhino Esports drive just finishing by the Blue Sky Esports Corvette, but he does take a top 5 in club ahead of Michael Lecco. What an overturn in the result for him. Keep in mind the Czechia driver, who started all the way down in 23rd place outside the club top 10, takes 6th in class. And then we will see Dean Sheasby struggling through to 12th in the end, 6th in the Premier class. And then we'll see Andy Chell, 7th in club, 13th overall, and another classic Chell drive in the wet for Panorama Motorsport. Had a James Howard who comes home with a disappointing 14th field for Dexterous Motorsport Cyan today. And we've got one more drive to come, ladies and gentlemen. He is a lap down. He has got damage to the car, but Eduardo Dino, as we say, he's bruised, but he's not broken. He will finish your last of your drivers there on a lap down in 23rd, and that'll be 13th in the club class. But what a race, ladies and gentlemen. My goodness. And well, I can tell you one thing, it has been full of surprises today, but also a hugely aware and respectful racing for everybody involved in the dry at the start and in the wet conditions when they came. You could not fault the drivers here. But as we take a look to the scenic view, let's take a look at those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries for Split Bs, round number 2 at the Mount Panorama Circuit for season 13 of the SimRacing International First Day GT3 Championship, brought to you on iRacing. And as we can see, Liam Fraser taking that first win of the season for Moonshiners Racing Club bootleggers by 2 seconds ahead of Menno Bloem, and Fraser did the right thing in the pits, which was to save all the fuel and then just take the very comfortable pit stop to get onto those wet tyres. And Menno Bloem, meanwhile, was too far back. Even though he had the pace on the wet conditions, but he was too far back to close down his rival. He needed a couple more laps. Behind the SimRacing Team Loans driver is John Treat, who completed your overall and Premier podium. And the Exodus Sport with Simcoe driver couldn't touch the top two, but to be fair, he wanted to be on the podium and he's earned it the hard way today. Behind him, his fellow British countryman of Michael Rhodes there, club winner and 4th overall for Darkwing Racing. A huge result there. Added to his second place, of course, for Watkins Glen, which was a recovery drive for here today. It was a drive to the top for Michael Rhodes. Mark de Vries, 5th there for SimRacing Team Loans. Not quite a double podium for the team, but be happy with that result ahead of Danny Weir, run-up in club for Dexterous Motorsport Cyan, who really came alive at the start of the race. And in qualified, he's got to be asking himself, what if I qualified a bit higher? How far could I have gone? Could I have won today? Robin Aston took 7th place of 5M Racing, just ahead of Ashley Shucksmith, who completed the club podium there, the privateer in the McDonald's machine. And the 222 driver really came alive in the wet, going from 25th to 8th overall over the course of the day. Indeed, made his way from the back end of the club top 10 onto the podium. Stuart Rice missing out right in for Blue Sky Esports, but still 9th overall ahead of Marcus Clayton, who he held off to the finish. Clayton completed the top 10 for Rado Esport. It was 5 apiece with regards to the club and Premier drives inside the top 10, and best dressed 11th place was your club driver Michael Lecco, the Czechia driver LS Racing 2, 4 seconds behind the top 10 and 2 seconds ahead of Dean Sheasby for Moonshiners Racing Club Rebels. Andy Chell for Quakemas Motorsport drove a solid stint for 13th ahead of James Howard for Dexterous Motorsport Siam, and Ellen Olsen there. What a drive from Ellen, from 47th to 15th place, and in the end it just stayed out of trouble, and the Fidelity V Racing driver earning some very valuable points, which we'll come on to shortly. Krista Petty, Jack Giles, Mikhail Salcuni, Peter Florian and James Fraser completed your top 20. Bear in mind, Ellen also the first driver to finish a lap down in this race, and outside the top 20, 21st, it was Ben Wayne for 5M Racing, head of Gianluca Rospo and Eduardo Andino. 2 laps down, Ross Gillett, the privateer there, the Welshman, having a nightmare into his race, but he was looking so set for what could have been an opportunity of that top 10 finish, but still he got to the end despite his internet connectivity issues, and he's got to be proud of that. He will get the points to the board today for 15th place in the club class. Dave Collier, Ross Wheatley, the 2 DC Motorsport drivers, both having unfortunate ends to their races, and we also did see a disappointed end for Rachel Hugh, 3 laps down, and the same for Simon Hunt, Paul Mayer and Hussein Sarkadeslu who complete your top 30. Barry Wemmen, 31st there, 4 laps down, and then we did cover to your 7 lap down finisher of Gavin Corby, but at this point we entered into non-finisher territory with Joshua Downing, James Bostock, Max Steed, Yelma Bergsma, Peter Armstrong, Matthew Massey, Connor Pig, Rob Gregg. Well, they complete your top 40, but all non-finishers there, and more non-finishers in the form of Martin Brandon, Daniel Miller, Steve Hughes, Andy Rudy, John Ledbrook, Govind Suresh, Rob Mackay, Jordan Butler, and your earliest retirement for the race, of course, Eddie Fearbold. But as we then come on to your individual class finishing positions, starting with Premier, of course, well, here we can see at the very top, Liam Fraser, first winner of the season, versus your round 1 winner of Menno Bloem, and John Treat completing the podium. Off the podium, where it's the best part of none other than 45 seconds to Mark de Vries, but you won't be too unhappy about that. 5 seconds ahead of Robin Astu. Went under the radar for 5M Racing, but did a fantastic job there in his Porsche in making his way forward. And then to see in 6th, Dean Sheasby, who struggled in the wet conditions, ahead of James Howarth, who found his way past Ellen Olsen, but it was too late for him to try and get into the top 5. And then Ellen Olsen there, with definitely a driver of the day contender of a performance, taking that 8th place for Fidelity V Racing, and some huge points coming away. Peter Florian making up for the difficulties of Watkins Glen, bringing home 9th today, a solid result for him. Head of Gianluca Rospo completed the top 10, also a lap down. Underneath Motorsport driver, it was DC Motorsport's pair Dave Collier and Ross Wheatley, and then we did see completing the top 15 3 laps down, Paul Mayer, Hussein Sakadesla, and Barry Wenman. We then did have the non-finishes of James Bostock, Yelma Bergsma, Matthew Massey, Connor Pink and Daniel Miller, and added to the casualty list, Steve Hughes, John Ledbrook, Govind Suresh, Rob Mackay, Jordan Butler, and Eddie Fearbold. Then to club we go, and in the other of our classes, well, Michael Rhodes in the end proved unstoppable for Darkwing Racing, head of Danny Weir and Ashley Shucksmith, and that was your podium. All of them, of course, very pleased to be there, but for Michael Rhodes, a 2-time podium finisher now, from a 2nd place at Watkins Glen to the win here today, whereas first podiums for Weir and Shucksmith. Stuart Rice just missing out on the podium, but holding off Marcus Clayton, a brilliant fight for the final spots in the top 5, and behind the Vinery Esport Ferrari, we did see it was another Ferrari of Mikhail Lecco, the LS Racing 2 driver, taking 6th place. He was 18 seconds ahead of Andy Chell, the last last lead lap finish for Quali Tabas Motorsport, and it was a lap down for Crystal Petty, Jack Charles, and Mikhail Salcuni. Salcuni recovered to 10th, given the early incident. Well done to him for doing so, with James Fraser Bathurst in 11th place there, ahead of Ben Wayne and Eduardo Adino. It was 2 laps down to Ross Gillett, ahead of Rachel Hugh, who was 3 laps down, as was Simon Hunt. And then we came to non-finishers of Gary Corby, Joshua Downing, Max Dean, Peter Armstrong, and also we did see there Rob Gregg, Martin Brandon, and Andy Rooney unfortunately retired from the race. And it's got to be said for Andy Rooney, what a sad end to the race, because he was looking so quick for Validity V Racing in those dry conditions, and when the wet weather came, unfortunately his race was led astray. But with that, ladies and gents, that completes our rundown of the finishing results, subject to any Suez inquiries. But it doesn't quite complete our broadcast for today, because coming up in approximately 5 minutes time, we'll be getting some interviews with our drivers, and we'll get to hear from them what it's been like today to race at the very challenging Bathurst circuit. And it's lights out and away we go for our season opener as Sardply gets a good start, but look alongside him and you'll see there Milton Tomlinson Dennis immediately go on the attack into the braking zone. One drive into the grass already, that's Mikey Story, but 3 wide they come into the opening corner. That's a bold move there. William Humphrey makes the place as they make the way through in towards turn number 2. I think the Altitude 3M Esports driver here might just be fancying his chances once again as they come into the braking zone now for turn number 1, and as they make the way from right into left, well, Hayden Miller here side by side with him. They'll go all the way through to turn number 3, and Saunders does take the place there. That's for overall position, not for pro position. Saunders is the pro leader, but he goes a bit deep there in 3 to the inside of 4 then, and Miller right now enjoying this. Saunders enjoying it. A little bit of rub and contact between the two of them, but nothing wrong with a bit of bump and grind between the two Fords, for the Ford and the Corvette, the 2 Americans I should say. And
with those 2 Evo drivers in front of them, they're just, they're realistically in a completely different race. They're just a barrier up towards the likes of Rubino and Wendell. Oh, there's Rubino going off the road, and here comes James Bostock, past 1, past 2. This is a great little move from James.
Oh, and look behind him as well. Hardiak, up high, he decides to come back down low. But Denny Plurger has really lost a lot of ground here. He's lost 7 places since the start of this race in that green Porsche. But look at this, for the lead, Hammond wants it. He's gone back down the inside. He got off the brakes again to let the car down the inside of Rob Mackay. And you said Rob was going to be clinging on at the front. And now he's clinging on to second. Great move by Lewis Hammond. Really good committed stuff. And look, down the inside, Richard White. He wants a piece of this in the Porsche. He's got James Bostock.
And it's lights out and away we go here as Mirko Bortolotti goes exactly on the green, and as they roar the way down towards turn number 1, Martin Statman side by side with him, but look behind, Tim Perry under pressure, Miguel Leon immediately as the Enosis Esports driver tries to put the pressure on. Further back we've got 3, 4 wide, they're all in the crush as they come through the opening bank. Look back for the rear of your second place runner of Statman, and Statman right now for the Gazex Racing team. What he's trying to do here, I think now, is just hold on to second, and if needed, he may have to act as a bit of a buffer and perhaps sacrifice a little bit of his race for the race leader here, although Bortolotti, to be fair, I think might be holding some pace back. But here comes Lux in the tow, in towards what we roller coaster they come with the Virginian corkscrew. It's left into right very quickly here as they both make the way, and it's 2 wide on entry, but Lux gets ahead. It's up into second now, as it will be Martin Statman falling down to 3rd, but Callum Lux does clear another one, and now only 1 car is between him and an opportunity of victory here tonight. Which is Perry going to make the move, or I'm going to have to make the move for him? Well, there's your answer. Perry's going to go on the inside here of Dean into the braking zone. Edwards gets to watch it from the popcorn seat view. Perry there being 2 wide on exit. Dean's going to try and hang around the outside. Does Edwards think about going up the inside as well? He gets himself ready for it in case there's contact, but there's not. Perry there being fair. Dean tucks back in behind. Lovely move there from Tim Perry. And I think meanwhile Beardsworth will hope they don't get close up in time as Beardsworth's going to look up the inside. He goes all in, and it's from very far back. He gets it stopped, however, and Beardsworth there nails the move, but Tillerson's going to come back at him up the hill. Does he go in on the brakes here? This is bold to do it on the inside. No, he does not. And Brian Beardsworth at the end, he gets it wrong. He goes out wide at turn number 6. Tillerson's going to be 2 wide with him, but 2 wide they're going to turn 7. Tillerson goes to the switchback there. 9 has no way through, and in the end they come down towards turn number 8. Well, there Tillerson backs off. He lets Hutchinson go around the outside, but is it the right call? Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time to kick off our post-round interviews from an absolutely entertaining round here at Bathurst. And to start us off, we're going to be coming straight into the Premier Class to speak to a driver who definitely had a day or two halves, because joining me now is none other than James Howarth. James, good evening to you. I can imagine that this is going to feel a very bitter-sweet day today, because qualifying in the first half of the race, absolutely fantastic, but it all went wrong in the wet.
Well, it wasn't in the way. It was basically a rookie mistake on the opening lap. I lost the rear. I got scared of Liam's Mustang, but after that, it was just a recovery drive, and then in the wet, I don't know. It was the final corner in the wet that really shook me off, but other than that, it was a average race for my end.
Oh, indeed. And thank you for reminding me of what happened at the start there. Indeed, that slipped my mind, that difficulty for the opening couple of corners. But before we talk a bit more about that, let's talk about your qualifying performance. Second place, so close between the two of you, it's in yourself and Liam Fraser. And we believe you're running low on fuel on that final lap that could have given you pole position.
Yeah, so when I came across the line to start my last flying lap, I had 1.1 laps worth of fuel. And coming through elbow, I had 0.3, and I was up by 5/10. So I was on for a 101.8, should I say, 108, 8 or 9. And then coming out of the final corner, I was spluttering, and then I was just trying to egg myself on to get in the 101s, but unfortunately I was just shy of that pole position.
Well, just shy of it, but to be fair, you gave it your all. And then when the race started, of course, we saw you really go for it for the first couple of corners. We thought you might have got yourself into lead at turn number 2. But in the end, it was none other than, I do believe, Liam, who just held it around the outside. Or in fact, Dean Sheasby as well trying to get involved.
Yeah, so obviously me and Dean were giving each other respect. I must have clearly got the lower wing, because I was catching him and then leaving him on the straight, but he had the cleaner line, racing line, coming into turn 3, and I didn't want to cause a collision, especially there, so I played it safe, lost a bit of time coming out of the exit. Then I just left myself vulnerable to a little, I wouldn't say a dive bomb, but a fake dive bomb for Liam coming into the uphill hairpin, and that pretty much scared me, put me off line, and obviously, and with cold tyres, I just lost the rear end.
Well, it's very unfortunate with regards to what happened there, and of course, we were expecting a very challenging race as we got towards the end with the weather conditions that were planned, that wet weather. I mean, how had you prepared for them?
I didn't. To put it bluntly, I didn't prepare for the wet at all, because I knew I had some pace in the dry, so I was going to hopefully try and build a safe or a big enough gap so I can just cruise. But as soon as that rain came, it was literally all about survival. I was keeping tabs on the leader's pace in the wet, and I think I was 1 or 2 seconds off each lap. So I wasn't really off the pace. It was just a really unfortunate lap 1 that cost me.
Well, very unfortunate with the lap 1, like you say. Otherwise, it would have been very interesting to see where you would have fitted into the picture. And as we did see the circuit get wetter and wetter in the final 30 minutes, how was it driving it out there? I mean, it looked for a lot of individuals, yourself included, as though you're having to relearn the circuit lap after lap.
Yeah, I was trying different lines as obviously the track evolved, trying to find the grip. Coming up the mountain, I wasn't finding the grip until like the very last second, which kept causing me to oversteer a little bit. But coming down the mountain, I just played it safe. The follow through, that was scary because there was puddles literally all across the apex, and like I say, I was just trying to find the grip. Sometimes I found it, sometimes I didn't, but it's one of them races.
Oh, 100%. Well, there's races whereby things just didn't quite work out. I mean, whether it was the start or all the way through to the end. But the good news is you do get one drop score this season, and it may become your drop score depending on how other rounds go. Next up, Spa-Francorchamps. Can we expect even more from you there?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It's one of the most tracks I'm comfortable with, and obviously I'm doing the 24-hour on Saturday. But funnily enough, I am not in the Mustang, so I'm gonna have to relearn the car track with a different car, and then I'll probably try and manipulate that into the Mustang. But I should be fighting probably top 5. Is my prediction.
Oh, I'm liking the prediction and a bit of fighting talk as well. Although, like you say, going from the Mustang to a different car for the 24 Hours of Spa to then come back to the Mustang is going to be a bit of a chop and change. And if you don't mind me asking, who are you racing with for the purposes of the 24 Hours? Is it with Dexterous Motorsports or with another team?
It is with Dexterous, and the team will consist of myself, Danny Phillips, Barry, and Martin.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we wish you all the best luck in your final preparations for that. And just before I do let you go, James, is there anyone you'd like to give a mention or a shout out to on the broadcast?
Obviously, the same people as usual, yourself for outstanding commentary throughout the seasons, and hope there's many more to come. The SRI admin team and the community itself, it's probably one of the best. My girlfriend Laura, and I'm going to say one more, and that is my golfing buddies who don't like me racing on a Thursday, but it is what it is.
Oh, fair play. Well, whilst they may be teed off with you, well, you've perhaps had a bit of a subpar day today, and I've run out all of golf puns there. But anyway, James, it's been a blast catching up with you. Sorry to see it hasn't quite worked out the way you wanted it to today, but best of luck in the 24 Hours of Spa, and we will see you next week to see whether you can push back onto the podium.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Take care.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Dexterous Motorsport Science, James Howarth, and talking out there the frustrations of today. I do apologise for completely having a bit of a mind blank there with what happened to him for turns 3 and 4 right at the start, but that really underpinning what was then going to be a disastrous round for him. But talking out in qualifying there, the battle between him and Dean Sheasby for pole position, and in the end, just spluttering across the line on his final lap when he had the pace to do it, well, he just fell short. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened through turns 3 and 4. Just a bit too much speed and a loose rear end on cold tyres, and well, suddenly it was all to the wall. But he towed to the pits, got back out, but then as we've seen in the replay footage in the background, some further mistakes there, and just seen his race fall apart, and then of course in the wet weather having to just gradually relearn the circuit. But by that time he had to fight his way back up to 14th place, overall 7th in the Premier class, and definitely not the result he was hunting for. But his spirits are still high. He gets ready for the Circuit Spa-Francorchamps in a week's time by taking part in the official iRacing 24 Hours of Spa this coming weekend. And we may not be in the same car, but representing the Dexterous Motorsports team either way. And we very much look forward to seeing him back out there in a week's time and see where you put all that experience to practice and make a practical result out of it and be back on the podium. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got plenty more interviews to come. We'll be right back for our next interview. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our race winner in the Premier class today. And joining me now is none other than Liam Fraser. Liam, good evening to you. And well, you missed out on the win at Watkins, but you got it here today and you got it in style. You must be happy.
I'm buzzing with that. That's my first GT3 win at SRI in 5 seasons. First win GT3 car.
Oh, wow. Well, to be fair, to take your first win the way you did, you've definitely earned it the hard way. And, well, in terms of how it started, talking a little bit about qualifying, 4th in qualifying, were you happy with your lap? Because, of course, I remember you saying at Watkins Glen, you gave it everything to be on pole, but you didn't have enough. Here today, though, 4th place.
Yeah, I had a couple of attempts in me. I just couldn't extract it. That wasn't because of traffic either, to be honest. Never really experienced too much traffic on the hot laps, but I ran out of time and fuel, so with 5 minutes to go I had to settle with 4th. I knew I was always going to be picked by Dean anyway, so 4th was a surprise now. Oh, him all right.
Well, the fourth place wasn't perhaps too much of a surprise, but definitely what was a surprise is perhaps the way your race went. To start off with, you moved very quickly up into second place, and it looked like the reverse of Watkins Glen. This time, yourself and Dean at the front, Menno Bloem behind.
Yeah, I'm not usually aggressive at the front at the start of the races. I knew I had to be quite calm, but I got a good run out the second corner, fifth corner, so I was going to look to maybe give Dean a bump and make sure he passes into the second corner up the hill. Then I thought, then it turned out, I've got a chance at second here, and we can make a plan of it, and that's what we did. We worked together again, working together, trying to save fuel into the first stint. There was a couple of times where we had to stop lifting coasting and get back on it, but then we realised we just need to calm down and get back on it. Seems like Menno did a better job though in the pit.
Oh, indeed. It looked like you both were doing a solid job. Although, for yourself specifically, it seemed as though you were destined to come out in front because after the pit stop when the rain arrived, you came out by the best part of 5 seconds ahead of everyone else.
Actually, I got jumped in the pits by Menno. He must have saved more fuel. But very quickly, he just got one big oversteer coming down the hill, and that allowed me to pass. And then we were nose to tail for a couple of laps, and the one big mistake into the cutting from Menno gave me a 10-second gap, and I just had to drive that gap. Really, I was just spent all week thinking about this race, to be honest, thinking about the really important phases. So the very start of the race, looking after making sure you threw the first 3 laps. We spent a lot of time on the transition as well, knowing exactly where the cut-off's going to be when we're going to transition to the wet tyres. We knew that. We was massively on top of that, and I knew what I could do in the wet. I knew it wasn't as good as some of the other drivers, but we did it. We put the practice in, made sure we were safe on the cold wets, and that was probably the most important phase is the cold wets, making sure you're still there when the wets were up to temperature.
Oh, most definitely. And that practice really paying off. And thank you for correcting me there about the fact that you came out behind Menno rather in front and that you gained from his errors. And that practice made you look so consistent. I have to ask then, with all the practices, did you feel at any point that you had to relearn the circuit as it was getting wetter or drier? Did it feel as though it was just naturally coming to you?
Felt like I was tippy-toeing in the wet phase. I was watching the Delta come down to Menno. I had nothing else to give, to be honest. So if it weren't for that mistake, he'd have won that race. It is absolutely a ribbon over the mountain. So there's just one line. There's massive snaps in the car if you just a tyre width wide. So just babying it over the top, tippy-toeing, and just scared of the snaps, which I'm not fully sure where they come from, but luckily I didn't get any in that race.
Well, you kept it together, and in the end, you've brought home your first win of the season. Indeed, your first win at SRI in 5 seasons. A huge achievement. And naturally, the question is now, can you do it again at Spa-Francorchamps in a week's time?
I don't seem to have the pace at Spa, but we seem to have the racecraft of putting a full race together. And so as long as we put a whole race together, a clean race, we're in for a shot of doing something decent at very least.
Oh, fair play. We definitely look forward to seeing you do something decent. Although I have to ask, just before we let you go, firstly, are you competing in the 24 Hours of Spa this weekend?
No, not this weekend, no. I actually don't like Spa. I'm probably one of the few that don't like Spa. I've just done that many laps in the past. I'm just not that fond of it.
All fair play. Well, a bit of a different opinion there, but it's always good to have something different. And as always, is there anyone you'd like to give a mention or a shout out to on the broadcast?
To yourself and the organisers of the league, to all the Moonshiner boys, new and old. And I want to dedicate that win to my friend Dwayne Wells, who sadly lost his battle with M&D a couple of weeks ago. I've been to his funeral today, so that one's for you, buddy.
Oh, goodness, Liam. Well, appreciate you dedicating your win to your good friend who's sadly no longer with us, but living on in spirit and shining for you, no doubt about it. With that, congratulations on your maiden SRI win, not just this season, but your career thus far. Surely the floodgates will open at this point for plenty more, and we will see you at Spa-Francorchamps in a week's time.
Thank you, Bob.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Liam Fraser, and signing off his interview there by dedicating his win to his good friend who sadly lost his battle with long-term illness, but as well, no longer with us, but shining through from Liam Fraser. And well, Liam absolutely shone today, no doubt about it, by bringing on home a sensational win, although admitting in qualifying it definitely was going to be essentially a decent lap from himself, and he was happy with that 4th place. There wasn't much more he could do, but then he converted his focus into the race, and that great start, of course, and as he mentioned there, not normally known for aggressive starts. We decided to be a bit more aggressive today, and we see the 3 of them on screen. Sheasby, Fraser, and then Menno Bloem. But as we went deeper and deeper into this stint, finding his fuel saving with his teammate of Sheasby, and that enabled to carry them both forward, but lost out in the pits to Menno Bloem, and afterwards it was mistakes of Bloem that enabled him to take the lead, and he just simply stayed out of trouble, kept it calm, kept it cool, kept it consistent, and that's how he's brought home his first win at SimRacing International. Interested to say that he doesn't enjoy Spa-Francorchamps, normally a favourite of so many drives, but not for Liam Fraser. Will that have any impact on whether he can be on the podium or even take the win next time out? We'll have to wait and see. But ladies and gentlemen, we've had 2 Premier interviews. We're heading to Club next. We'll be right back for our 3rd interview of the evening. And well, ladies and gentlemen, coming to Club, there's only one drive we could come to first and foremost. He joins me now. It's Michael Rhodes. Michael, good evening to you. After a recovery drive at Watkins Glen, I mean, this must feel special because this was a win well earned.
Yes, it felt very, very good at the end of it. I was surviving near the end of that with the rain, but yeah, so happy with the win, happy with the drive. Love Bathurst.
Well, you've definitely seen the love reciprocated by the circuit, although starting off with qualifying, 13th overall and 4th in class. Compared to that 2nd place at Watkins Glen on the grid, were you a little bit surprised with where you started?
Not really. I think I could have crept maybe to P2, but I couldn't get the lap together. It's such a hard track to get the lap together. And again, in the Ferrari that I'm still getting used to, it was one of them. I'll take P4. I knew the rain was coming for the race, so I knew my race pace was going to be a little bit better.
Oh, fair play. And going into the race, we did see you pick up the pace quite quickly. And, well, it did look as though in the end you were part of a very long line of cars from 2nd through to 6th in the club class, all just in position, and all slowly creeping towards Stuart Rice. In fact, I think you were at the head of that pack.
Yeah, I think I was. I think I was just after I got ahead of Joshua Downing, with that move around the outside on him, which was nice, to be fairly honest. Yeah, but then, yeah, just trying to catch up to Stuart because obviously he's quick and he's very good. But glad I caught up to him and obviously made the move just as the rain hit, if I remember rightly.
Oh, indeed, making the move literally as the rain was coming, like you say, so took the lead, and then we went into the very slippery phase, or the very risky phase, if you will. I mean, had you set yourself up for the wet today, or had you gone with a bit of a compromise setup?
I prayed, if I'm honest. I really prayed. No, I didn't really. I went with a quite safe setup. I was going to crank the wing up when I was in the pits. I decided not to. And then I just decided, you know what, just try and be clean and hopefully you'll be fine. And it looks like I was because I think my pace on the wet was really good. So, yeah, I'll take it. I like driving the wet.
Well, indeed, you definitely looked very settled out there in the wet and taking the win by quite a considerable margin. I mean, what would be your number one bit of advice in driving the wet, particularly at Bathurst? Because we saw so many drivers getting it wrong, but it didn't seem to be going wrong for yourself.
Honestly, take your time. Don't rush into the corners. Obviously, when it's moderate, when it's quite heavily wet, don't be on the racing line is another one. But literally just take your time, crank up the TC and ABS, and be patient, and you'll be fine.
Well, you most certainly were patient in and being rewarded with your first win of the season by that staggering margin in the best part of 40 seconds or so to Ashley Shucksmith, well, not Ashley Shucksmith, to Danny Weir. They're not all going to come like that, understandably, but this is your first one of the season. Spa-Francorchamps, can you make it 2 in a row?
I'm going to try to make it 2 in a row. I will aim for it.
Oh, fair play. And I have to ask, are you planning to do the 24 hours of Spa this weekend in preparation?
Yes, I am doing the Sport 24 in the different car though, so it's going to be a little bit weird after doing like a good 6 hours in. I think I'll be doing it in a McLaren and then having to go and practice in the Ferrari, but hopefully not too dissimilar.
Oh, fair play. Well, it'll be the same circuit, but a bit of a similar drivetrain at least of car, and we wish you the best of luck in competing in the Spa 24 hours. I presume it'll be with the Darkwing Racing guys?
Yes, it will be, absolutely.
Well, best luck to you and the DWR team. But just before we do let you go, firstly, I have to ask, well, I'm going to throw a bit of a different question away, which is if we were to put a circuit on the schedule which was of your choice and it's your favourite circuit, what would it be?
I mean, it's technically you already did it. It was round 1, Watkins Glen. But I'd like to see Portimao. I love Portimao. Every time I race there, I love it. So if there was Portimao in every season, I'd take it. I'll be happy with that.
Oh, fair play. Love that. And I think you'll definitely get a lot of thumbs up from people in the YouTube chat about Portimao. I'm with you on that. And then lastly, of course, is anyone you'd like to give a mention or a shout out on today's broadcast?
Shout out to the Darkwing Racing boys as always. Big shout out to Danny because he's got P2. I know we've had some good races and I know he hates the fact that I was ahead of him. And shout out to Gav as well. He was in the Discord with me. So big love to them guys. And obviously everyone else on the track with me.
Well, Michael, it's been an absolute blast to catch up with you. Congratulations on your maiden win for the season. Perhaps more to come, starting with Spa in a week's time. But until then, good luck for the 24 hours of Spa in the Darkwing Racing McLaren. And we'll see you in a week's time in your Ferrari, looking to give it your all.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too. So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Michael Rhodes. And well, today, absolutely put everything together, no doubt about it. And we're talking about firstly and foremost the fact that in the wet, he enjoys the Bathurst circuit, but just taking his time and just gradually easing it up on the electronics and making sure not to make any mistakes. But qualifying-wise, he was very happy with where he qualified, no doubt about it. And got everything together very succinctly to start in fourth, but very quickly found himself at the head of what was a very tight pack battling for second through to sixth in the club class and slowly creeping towards Stuart Rice. Made the move for lead right towards the end just before the rain came, and in doing so, what a very valuable move there that enabled him to really take the initiative of the race. And after that, he didn't put a foot wrong where many of his rivals seemed to drop the ball. Not so for Michael Rhodes, who definitely enjoyed himself out there and bringing home a sensational first win of the season by the best part of 40 seconds over Danny Weir. I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, he's looking forward to Spa, and well, he's going to give it his all there, and well, can he make it another one? We'll see in a week's time, but until then, he's definitely going to get his head down and get plenty of time on the circuit in the 24-hour event. But with that, we've got a couple more interviews to come, and well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back very shortly for our fourth interview of the evening. And well, if we've heard from our club winner, we need to hear the story now from our club runner-up today. And what a day he's had, because joining me now in the interview room is none other than Danny Weir. Danny, good evening to you. And I mean, as far as days go, I don't think you had it on your tarot or your fortune teller card that you go from 8th to 2nd stay at Bathurst in the wet conditions and look very comfortable whilst doing so.
Yeah, it was a really good race. I do love Bathurst. I think it's a great track, and the rain just added that little aspect of danger to it. But yeah, I was a bit shocked. I knew I had some sort of pace during quali. I think if I set a decent lap, I'd have probably been up in P4-5, but I just couldn't hook it together. So I knew there was definitely pace out there. But obviously, with this track being so difficult to overtake, you're just basically surviving. And then after the first couple of laps, I worked my way up, and I was like, oh, okay, it's quite settled here. And then the rain came, and it was just like, okay, now this is just not about racing, just try and survive to the end. But I was ecstatic. I was actually shocked when the guys told me I was in like P6 overall. It was amazing.
Oh, indeed, an amazing race for yourself. But let's just boil it down to some of its constituent parts. Qualifying, 18th overall, 8th in the class. Something tells me there was a lot more out there.
Yeah, there definitely was. It was a struggle because obviously this track, bearing in mind, because you've got the tight section of the top of the hill, mountain and the bottom of the mountain, trying to navigate through cars who are either not on laps or have just ruined their lap. It's very frustrating because I was up so many times going up through the mountain, and then I've been slowed by a car who's either just lost it or just come out of the pits. So it was frustrating. I definitely think I could have got into the P4s, P3s potentially if I could just hook up that lap, but it just wasn't happening today, so I had to settle for P8.
Well, you may have had to settle for that 8th place at the end of a slightly compromised qualifying, but early in the race, we did see you become one of the drivers. We just spoke to the man who was at the head of the pack for 2nd through to 6th in club. That was, of course, Michael Rhodes, but you were in amongst that pack as well, albeit a bit further back on it.
Yeah, so I was quite lucky in a sense that James was one that spun, because obviously in our chat he was just telling us I've spun, so I had early warning that there was an incident ahead, so I managed to check up a lot more and just plan my route through. And as I got to the incident, it just literally cleared as I got there, so I was like, oh, okay, let's just keep going. So like I said, I kept it cautious, but I think because of the cars had compromised lines going in, I come out better off. And yeah, so it just gave me a bit of clear space after that, and I was able to just kind of navigate my way through and just try and stay with Michael as much as I could. But Michael was on fire today. Like he couldn't put a foot wrong. He was in.
Gone down for some unknown reason. It will come back very shortly. There it goes. It comes back just like that. One of the things to say, of course, Michael was flying, but you weren't bad yourself, to be fair, and you did break away from the rest of your club rivals as the race went on.
Yes, I think obviously we had a big pack during the dry section where it was me, Michael, and Stuart Rice plus a pro driver. I don't know who the guy was, but we was all really close together. And then obviously the rain started to come. The pro drivers pitted. Me, Stuart, and Michael stayed out for one more lap. I think it was fair to say that it was okay for one more lap. And then it just showed the difference between the three of us in the wet, because I think Stuart seemed to struggle a little bit, and Michael just flew, and I was just left in the middle really. So I was just like, oh, okay, so I've got no one really in front of me to fight anymore. I've got Stuart, I'm kind of gapping quite a lot, so I'm just going to keep my pace and keep going, not get involved in anything. Any pro drivers or even lapped cars that were quicker than me, I was happy to let them through as long as they just didn't compromise my race really. So just focusing on self-preservation during that rainy period.
Well, you definitely kept yourself alive quite comfortably in the end, and also picked up overall places as you went. And we'll come towards the end of the race, of course. We did see the wet weather really get heavy, and I have to ask, how was your Porsche set up today? Was it set up more for the rain, a bit of a middle ground, or was it more for the dry?
So I chose a safe setup, so a dry setup as well. I'm always in the mindset of I keep it in the dry setup for the dry section of the race, because obviously the dry section was going to be the longest part of it, and I'll just have to be careful as it gets to the wet. So my car was set up for dry, but I did choose a safer setup, so I had a bit of a higher wing. So it was kind of a middle ground really, and I think it suited the Porsche because I was able to, in the dry, go flat through the top of the mountain from the majority of it, and then when it comes to the rain, I had enough downforce to get myself slowed. I had a couple of moments where I thought I was going to go straight over into the forest elbow and I'd hit a puddle, but the downforce of the car and the way it was set up, it was able to get it slowed down enough to make the corner without hit contact with the wall. So I was quite happy really.
Well, definitely worked out very nicely for yourself, all things considered, and your best result of the season so far. You've jumped onto the second spot of the podium, so does that mean at Spa-Francorchamps we could see you on top?
Potentially. I think this is a very track dependent. I'm very confident around this track, and I feel better in the rain. Spa itself, I'm very happy with Spa. I do like Spa, so I'm hoping to be there and thereabouts, but I'm not going to set myself a target of P1, P2 or podium. I'm just going to be happy to just see what I can do and just play it by ear really. Higher up I can get the best.
I think a smart call there to just set your expectations relatively low and just see where it goes from there. And, well, of course, Spa-Francorchamps' 24-hour event is coming up this weekend. Are you thinking of taking part in it?
I personally won't. I was expecting to have surgery at some point this couple of weeks because I've had a gallbladder issue, but that's not happening now. So I didn't put myself down for it. But the DXD team will be competing. We think we've got 4 drivers, which is going to be interesting. I think maybe 5 now. So they've just getting themselves set up. I'm just monitoring them, making sure they're happy. and hopefully we have a good team result.
Oh, well, we wish you and we wish the team all the best of luck, and I'm sure you'll be cheering them on. But just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, thank you to yourself, obviously, for the commentaries, and I can't wait to watch it back. I've watched clips of it already, and it's been really good to watch. Big shout out to the DXT boys, obviously, for just being the moral support during that whole race. Shout out to Michael for being rapid, and dedicate the second place to my two kids, Danny and Lila.
Well, I'm sure Danny and Lila, if they are tuning in or if they do catch up with us, hello to them both. They'll be very happy with their dad dedicating his podium to them. Danny, an incredible result today, no doubt about it. Well done for taking your first podium of the season. We hope to see you back up there sooner rather than later, perhaps at Spa in a week's time. But until then, rejoice in your achievements today and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, you two. Hopefully see you soon.
So hearing that, ladies and gentlemen, from Danny Weir, and we're very happy with his performance today, no doubt about it, for Dexterous Motorsport Cyan. And to the fact there's a lot more pace out there in qualifying, which we suspected, but he couldn't get it together because given the nature of the circuit and the open qualifying, well, sometimes he was finding other cars over the mountain, all on their own laps, of course, and he just could not quite get the hammer down, unfortunately. But still, the 255 driver made sure to keep a positive spirit, and that worked out very well for him over the distance and in the race, gradually making his way forward, fighting his way forward and to the podium spots, and in the end get himself in second place and sixth overall, and massively impressed with himself. Went for a safe setup, but one that lent more towards the dry, but he could manage in the wet because he knew the majority of the race would be in the dry, although intriguingly in the end it was a 50-50 split in terms of a dry and a wet race there, which was unexpected, that rain coming a little bit earlier than planned. But still the 255 dry made sure to find the right balance, as we do see him making his pit stop there to go with the fuel and the tyres, and when then coming home with his best result of the season so far, dedicating it to his kids. And well, at Spa-Francorchamps, keeping his expectations low, but he may just be able to deliver another big blow in the championship. And could he come out of round number 3 as championship leader? We'll have to see in a week's time. But ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come. We'll be right back for our final interview of the night. And well, ladies and gentlemen, for our final interviewee, we're making our way a little bit further down the club order, because joining me now in the interview room is none other than LS Racing's Mikhail Leko. Mikhail, good evening to you. What a round you've had from 9th to 6th, and to be fair, a great result in a Ferrari that looked absolutely set up for success in the wet.
Hi, Paul. Thank you. I'm kind of surprised by the result by myself, because I did not expect to even finish, let alone be 6th in my class. So I'm not a wet driver. I do not race in wet basically at all. This was my premier wet race in I don't know, 6-7 months. So I'm surprised by myself, and I can't believe it.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. Well, I'm so glad you've been able to pull this off. Now, let's talk a little bit about qualifying. 23rd overall, 9th in class. Were you happy with your qualifying session?
Actually, yeah, because my quali lap time was my personal best, basically. I never set up better lap time until then. And, you know, I bought Bathurst basically just for this league race. I never raced it before. I had 1 hour of dry practice before the race, so it was just, you know, go and pray. I won't kill anyone else, so I'm happy that I just finished, and everything else is just a bonus.
Oh, fair play to you. Well, limited experience with the circuit, but you've definitely got to grips with the circuit very nicely. And when we did go racing, we saw you take quite a safe approach to the race. Was the plan always just to wait until the rain came?
I don't think so. I was just very cautious of other people, basically, from lap 1. You know, Bathurst, very narrow track, walls everywhere. You can get killed very easily, especially with the tow rule. So I was just racing what I know best. I was taking lines that I know I can take. I was trying to not use the fast repair until the rain came. So basically, I was just going around in circles and hoping no one will kill me. So, you know, the rain was something else, but I managed to stay on track. Basically, I had a few bumps here and there, use the fast repair, but it was just luck. Basically, I call it luck.
Oh, fair play. Well, you may have had some luck on your side, but also you had to have the skill to keep it on the road. When the wet weather arrived, we did see you coming in the end quite early. I think the plan was just get on the wet tyres, be as safe as possible.
Yeah, I was actually running out of fuel in the moment I was coming into pits. I had like 1 lap left, so I was checking the radar and basically calling my spotter if the track is wet or dry. And the moment it became very lightly wet, I just went for the wets because I know like one lap later and I would be in a wall because even though it was a light rain, it became quite a monsoon, especially in the uphill area, and any more laps on dry tires would kill me basically.
Oh, indeed, a smart call there. Keep it safe, get on the right tyres, and you're on your way. And at what point did you know that you were on course to finish 6th place in club?
At no point, basically. I was really praying not to spin. My car was kind of beat up for like last 5 laps because I was quite sending it into the corners, even though the track was very wet and it was raining. My fast repair was gone, so I was just hoping I won't spin, and I had very close call moments few times. I think there was Dean behind me, like 2 seconds, 3 seconds behind me, so I was just praying not to spin. And even though if I spin, and I would be happy just with finishing. Doesn't matter if it's 11, 12, 15th place. Just I wanted to finish today, and I actually exceeded the expectation.
Oh, I'll definitely say so. Not just finishing the race, but also finishing with almost the top 5, a good haul of points in the club class. And next up, Spa-Francorchamps. How are you feeling for round 3?
I don't know. I'm not sure about anything. I don't get that much seat time in a week. Personal time, fiance, work. You can name it. But I was practicing Spa quite a lot because Spa 24 hours is coming up. But I'm not quite sure about the track. It's not my type. I am more of the street circuit type driver, like Bathurst or Adelaide or something else, and Spa is not actually my type. I changed a setup shop quite recently, and I haven't tried their setups on Spa, so it might be different, but my races on IMSA and now GT3 series weren't that great on Spa.
Oh, I see. Well, still, there's a bit of time to potentially work on Spa, but otherwise, we look forward to seeing you take on the circuit next week and see if you can get some points out of the race there. But just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a mention to?
Yeah, of course, to you, Paul. The broadcast is very great every week. I want to shout out Liam Sheep Racing guys, everyone in the team, basically 2 teams. They are so nice, and I am happy to be part of their team. And basically, I want to shout out all of the field because the racing was very respectful. When you tell people to move outside or inside because you're racing someone, they do it. They're waiting for you to pass. They're holding brakes. And they even managed to tow in time on the uphill area. So shout out to everyone racing today.
Oh, indeed. I'm sure the whole grid will appreciate the shout out, and I agree with you entirely. Some very respectful driving all the way through. Well, Mikhail, we'll leave it there. Congratulations, though, on a brilliant and unexpected result. We hope to see even more of you and perhaps get you back in the interview room later on this season. But until then, rejoice in your achievements at Bathurst, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Paul. See you guys.
Well, goodness me, what a way to wrap up our interviews, ladies and gentlemen. That was Mikhail Leko, and well, the Lame Sheep Racing 2 driver, or LS Racing as it translates into, an absolutely huge result for him. Bringing on home an unexpected 6th place for a 9th place start. Very happy with it, although very inexperienced at Bathurst. Mentioned the fact he'd only purchased the circuit on iRacing. It's not a free circuit, you have to buy it, and he'd only bought it in what was the run-up to this round and getting the best part of about an hour's practice time in, and well, that being due to a combination of factors including work and also spending time with his fiancée, etc. As we all do, of course, work-life balance always a big theme, or in this case, work-life championship balance, but to be fair, he found a balance on the day. Just wanted to survive, not make a mistake, and in the end, did exactly that. Yes, he did have a couple of rough moments out there, but nothing that would stop him from seeing that finish line, and only knew he'd finished 6th in club when he got out the car and took a look at the standings and was pleasantly surprised. Well, he prefers street circuits compared to more open road racing circuits such as Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and what it does mean for Michael Lecco, or it will mean for him in particular, this is only really the street circuit that we see on the calendar, so he could be up against it in the rounds to come, but to be fair, I think this will motivate him and just push him a little bit further, and we look forward to seeing where we can continue to run inside the top 10 in the club class as the season goes on. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that completes our interviews, and it's now time for us to wrap up. Well, just before we do wrap up, of course, we talk about who we've spoken to for this evening. And that's firstly, we had an interview with James Howarth in the Premier Class at Dexterous Motorsport Cyan. And, well, we had a brilliant conversation with him about the challenging day that he'd had and started in second place, but in the end could not quite convert it into victory, and it just fell a little bit short for him after batting so hard for that pole position versus Dean Sheasby in qualifying, but an instant through turns 3 and 4 really spelled doom on his day, and then later mistakes as well just added woe his way. Then we came to your fellow Premier Class driver, your winner today of MRC Bootleggers, Liam Fraser, and started full for a lap that he was happy with, and in the end made his way forward. He was up into second when the wet weather arrived through the pit stops, but he needed a mistake from Menno Bloem to be able to take that win, and he did so in the end, holding on by 2 seconds to the end. Then we came to Michael Rhodes in the club class, the Darkwing racing driver. He had plenty of fun out there today, and well, pushed himself hard and pleasantly surprised himself with that win, albeit to be fair, it was gradually coming to him after passing Stuart Rice just before the pit stops, and after that he never looked back. And then we spoke to Danny Weir for Dexterous Motorsport Cyan, talking about his achievements after a slightly subpar qualifying performance. Don't worry, we're not all getting the golf puns back out, as I can see Kitty's mad saying there for us to put them away, and indeed we won't make any more of them before we make a bogey out of them. And well, in the end, the Dexterous Motorsport Cyan driver made his way from 8th to 2nd, and will perhaps ask himself the question, what could it have been if he qualified a bit higher, but still very pleased to be on that podium. And then we just spoken to Ellis Racing 2's Michael Lecco, the Czechia driver, who then going from 9th to 6th, a decent qualifying performance, and very happy to finish in 6th place. Did not expect it at all with a circuit he has very little experience of, which given Bathurst now challenging it is, normally he needs a lot of experience, but for Michael Lecco, it was all about keeping it calm, keeping it on the road, and that's exactly what's led him home to that result, much like, of course, Ellen Olsen may could say in the Premier Class similarly. But a big thank you to all 5 of our drivers for joining me for a post-round interview. There were plenty more who volunteered. Unfortunately, we can't catch them all due to time. We're going to get many more interviews as the season goes on. Don't you worry about that, ladies and gentlemen. And well, with that, it is now formally time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about how you can be on the grid here at SimRacing International and go racing with us in any of our ongoing upcoming series, well, number one thing to do is join the official Discord, invite link available at the bottom of your screen. And, well, when you do join our Discord, you'll find a friendly community, well, the friendliest available on an international scale. Although operates out the United Kingdom, we have members from all around the world, and you can join in any of our following series. Of course, you've been tuning in to today, our Thursday GT3 Championship in its 13th season with the A and B split. Alternatively, if you're a GT3 fan but you prefer to race on weekends, we do have our UK SimRacing Sunday Showdown in its 19th season, and that runs every Sunday. For those of you who are more inclined towards the older GT machines, the Gran Turismo endurance cars from 1999 through to 2023, particularly focused on the last 5 years of their racing era, we do have our upcoming 3rd season, the GT Championship, run on Friday evenings every 2 weeks, starting at the end of this month of July. But if you're looking for something brand new, and perhaps you're looking to go into the very top tier of what we've got to offer, well, ladies and gentlemen, starting very soon, we have our Transatlantic Trophy, dedicated to GT3 and GT4 McLaren machinery, and our all-new Motorsport UK Esports Approved Championship with some huge prizes up for offer, and you won't want to miss it. If you're part of a team, whether you're veterans all the way through to rookies, we'd love to see you on the grid for that in particular, because that is going to be a spellbinding season, no doubt about it, with the best part of 60 and 90-minute races, plenty of strategy on the cards, and plenty teamwork on the offering. That'll be on Wednesday evenings every 2 weeks. But if you're looking for something very casual, perhaps you're looking to dip your toes into the Sim Racing League environment, or perhaps you just want to build up some experience, perhaps you've been away for some time, well, of course we have our practice league with free races per week on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. So there's something for everyone here at SimRacing International, and we'd love to see you become a part of it. We'd just like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include CarMate, Modern Technology, the GP2 Group, and lastly, but by no means least, Motorsport UK's esports division, for recognising us as a recommended community here at SimRacing International. We're very grateful for that recognition, and long may it continue throughout 2026 and beyond. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, next time out, round number 3. Home, of course, the iRacing official 24 Hours of Spa this coming weekend. It's a circuit that's going to be extremely familiar to our drivers, regardless of whether they're competing in the endurance race or not, given the fact, of course, it is the home of motorsport in Belgium. Spa-Francorchamps, the Ardennes Forest. Be there on the Thursday, the 16th of July, to see how the story continues. But until then, what we've seen today, emerging out the other side of Bathurst, is the fact that whilst Liam Fraser scored his first win of the season, it is Menno Bloem who holds a slender lead on top at the moment, based on the results we've seen over the first 2 rounds, but the two of them looking exceptionally close together, and well, right now there's very little to separate them other than result countback. Meanwhile, in the club class, well, Michael Rhodes leads the way after a second and a first with an absolutely dominant first place today, although you could say, to be fair, it's been a bit of time coming after the recovery drive of Watkins Glen, but now can he keep the results coming as we go deeper into the season? And as for the Teams Championship, well, we'll get you an idea of what that's looking like after our first 2 rounds, potentially going into round number 3 next time out, but indeed it's still looking close at the top there based on the initial results that are coming in. But we've had plenty of fun at Bathurst Day in Split B, and even more is to come in round number 3 at Spa-Francorchamps. But until then, we've been SimRacing International. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuned to Split B of Season 13, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.